Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, May 22nd, 2018 regular caucus meeting for the City of Brook Park. Michelle, please call the roll.
Scott?
Here.
Bergio?
Here.
Orcutt?
Here.
Stem?
Here.
Mancini?
Here.
Poindexter?
Here.
Salvatore?
Here.
Everyone, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I saw that. It's running away from you.
Item 3, approval of minutes of preceding meetings. We have one, which is a regular caucus meeting held on May 8th, 2018.
That was a big meeting.
Motion to approve those regular caucus meeting minutes from May 8th.
Support.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes properly supported. Discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Mancini?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Orcutt?
Yes.
Stem?
Yes.
Poindexter?
Yes.
Salvatore?
Yes.
Meeting minutes have been approved. Moving on to item 4 under discussion. First item is Department of Public Utilities Division of Water presentation. Mayor Gamella, per Council President Vecchio. In attendance is Commissioner Alex Margavicius. Mr. Margavicius, if you would like to come to the podium. I hope I said your name correctly.
Close.
Very close.
Margavicius. But thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. President, members of council, and Mayor Gamella for the invitation, for being here tonight. I and some others from the administration met with Mayor Gamella a few months ago and started up the discussion again about the suburban water main renewal program that we have, and the mayor invited me to come and present again, and I think we were here a few years ago, and we'll give you just the highlights again of what's involved in this agreement. First of all, with me tonight also is Margaret Jackson. For any of you who don't know Margaret, you want to know Margaret. She's an absolute go-to person. If you've got any issues at all, feel free to contact her, and she'll get you an answer lickety-split. So if you don't have her card, you want to get her card. Okay?
Not to interrupt you, but should we have her speak then?
Be out of here quicker, perhaps. Okay, very quickly, a little bit about the Cleveland water system. We are a full-service water provider. We do everything from production of water all the way to distribution, billing, collections. Since 1856, we've been around. We're a division of the city of Cleveland. We serve 1.4 million individual people in the region, over 430,000 accounts in 6 counties. We are the 9th largest water system in the United States, a major regional water utility. We are an enterprise fund, meaning all of our revenue comes from water rates. No commingling with taxes of the city's general fund, rates and fees. Our annual budget is about $300 million and about 1,000 employees. On the bottom slide on that next page, you see the map. It's outlined in pink is where Brook Park is. You probably may be aware the City of Cleveland water system is broken up into tiers. We serve from Lake Erie elevation, which is 574 feet above sea level, up to 800 feet above lake level. It would be ineffective to try and serve that entire vast range within a single pressure district. So historically, the water system was broken up into low service, first high, second high, third high, and water rates are based in part on the service district you're in. The higher district you are, the little bit higher rates are. The logic being it costs more electricity to push it higher up and further out. And Brook Park is partially in the first high district and a little bit in the second high district. About 10 years ago, Cleveland started discussions with the suburbs about new ways to interact. And in our water service agreement and in the current water service agreement Brook Park has signed with us, there is a concept called the Suburban Water Council of Governments, established back in the 80s, and for a long time it was inactive and not functioning under primarily Mayor Zanotti's leadership of Parma Heights back then. It got reinvigorated and became active again. The Council of Governments, and they are assisted to a large extent by the Cuyahoga County Mayors and Managers Association, and Lisa Barno, if you know her. But they have chosen to divide themselves into 9 geographic regions. Brook Park is in the region called the Southwest region, and each of the mayors in those communities jointly pick which one of them to be the formal representative to the Council of Governments, and an alternate is selected as well. When the COG was having discussions with us 10-some years ago, we were talking about water rates. We talked about reducing the suburban rate multiplier, which has been done. There has been a greater drive towards rate equity based now on true cost of service. How much does it really cost to deliver water to suburban second high versus third high? And we've driven rates more to cost of service in the 10 years. We established that fixed charge, and you've got a $9 per month fixed charge that's on your water bill. That was established then. But then we also talked about water main ownership by the suburbs and reinvestment in suburban water mains. That was a big issue. There were problems with suburban mains, and reinvestment was not happening. And then also got linked with this was some regional economic development considerations. So the big issue again was there was very little reinvestment in local water mains under that version of the water service agreement that came around in the 80s. So for clarification, the Division of Water, we own the big stuff. We own the water treatment plants, we own the pump stations, we own the water towers, we own the transmission mains, which are the big 20-inch mains that push water from the lake all the way to through 600 plus square miles of our system. Those mains, again, 20-inch and larger that we own. However, up and down, and there's about 400 miles of transmission main. There's another in the suburbs, 3,600 miles of the local distribution lines. These are the 12-inch, 10-inch, 8-inch, some case 6-inch mains on every single street. They're the ones that feed the fire hydrants. The home connections all come off of those mains. And our obligation to you and all the communities is to repair them when they break, and we do, but our obligation is not to do capital reinvestment. If a main is breaking, we'll continue to repair it, but if it's breaking so frequently that replacement is really the right thing to do, we don't do that for communities like Brook Park and others that are still under the old version of the water service agreement. Brook Park owns the water mains that are in Brook Park, and we're precluded from doing capital reinvestment in an asset we don't own. So there were known issues, there were known problems, and they said, can we come up with a new model to try and deal with problematic issues related to local distribution lines? Again, high break rates, insufficient fire flow, and such. So we came up with a new agreement 10 plus years ago now, and it has 5 essential elements to it. The first is your current water service agreement is amended, if you will. The vast bulk of the terms and conditions in there remain the same, are unchanged since this version of agreement came about in the 80s. All the bulk of the terms and conditions are the same, but there are a few key changes that are in there. So for a community signing the new agreement, there is an amendment or a restatement, if you will, to the water service agreement. There is a companion economic development agreement that I'll go through what those terms and conditions are. There's an asset transfer agreement where you thereby transfer ownership of the water mains to the Division of Water. And then there's the Suburban Main Replacement Program, the main renewal program, the $15 million a year in suburban main renewal that we're undertaking as we speak. And lastly, there's a reimbursement agreement. And I'll hit the highlights on each one of these elements real quick. First, the water service agreement being amended. Basically, the clock restarts, and we're hitched to each other for a minimum of 20 years going forward once you re-sign the agreement. Now, you can cancel the new agreement. Let's say you don't like some element of it. You can cancel it and go back to the version or flavor you have today. But you do have to give 5 years advance notice, and you can only give that notice in year 15. So we are tied to each other for the minimum of 20 years, but thereafter, if you want to get out, you can and go back to the other terms and conditions. The reimbursement agreement has been modified. Again, I'll get into some of those details. We clarified some reporting requirements. If you do the water main work in conjunction with some road work, there are some floor and ceilings reimbursement dollar amounts that have been clarified. And some inconsistent termination language was cleaned up. We made all these changes in 2012 to this agreement, and we did it with a committee of suburban law directors that worked with us to make sure that these terms and conditions were helpful and beneficial to all parties. And the Council of Governments universally accepted these changes. The Economic Development Agreement, we used to do JEDs, but state law was modified a number of years ago where you cannot use a JED for what's essentially a water deal, but there is another version called a municipal utility district. Basically accomplishes the same thing. It's called a MUD, M-U-D, Municipal Utility District. And that agreement essentially is this. Again, same as the water service agreement, we're tied to each other for 20 years. There's generic language about economic development cooperation between the two communities. The agreement is strictly bilateral. Okay, so I'll get into some of the restrictions that neither party can do, but your inability or the restrictions you have to incent a company from Cleveland to move to Brook Park, those restrictions are not in place if you want to poach a business from anybody else, okay? The fact that we have an agreement with Parma Heights does not preclude you from incenting a business from Parma Heights to move to Brook Park. So it's strictly bilateral. It's not multilateral, if you will. We do agree to limit the pursuit of each other's businesses. There are some limitations in the municipal utility district agreement. Real estate taxes, and I think this was an issue a couple years ago, the last sticking point. But under the current language, the real estate tax abatement on a company that you're trying to incent from Cleveland must be less than 75% of the tax. Okay, you cannot incent more than 75%, and must be for a period of not greater than 10 years. As long as you are within those restrictions, you can incent a company from Cleveland to move, as long as you don't exceed those limits. Income tax abatements are strictly prohibited. And I have a list of some of the other incentives that are still allowed, discounted property, low interest loans, and a few others. I'm not an expert in economic development, but there are still a few tools that are available to the community. Now, it is possible, even without an incentive, that a business may, of their own volition, choose to move from one of the communities to the other. And by the way, it is truly bilateral. It goes either way. When this was first crafted 10 years ago, Cleveland's concern was losing businesses to the suburbs. Now there's some movement going back the other way. There are some businesses and law firms, etc., that are looking to relocate back downtown from some suburbs. And we have been precluded from incenting them to seal the deal, if you will, because of this water service agreement that's in place. So it does go both ways. But again, if a business chooses of their own volition to move from one of the communities to the other, first, what the rule is, it applies to a business with a payroll of $500,000 or more. So if it's something less than that, if it's $300,000 in payroll that moves, that's exempt from any restrictions or any issues whatsoever. But if it's a payroll bigger than that, what happens is for the next 5 years is the winning community remits back to the losing community 50% of those new income taxes you collect. Starting in year 6, you keep 100%. If the business moved to Brook Park, for example, starting in year 6 and there forward, you keep 100% of the new income taxes that you're collecting. So it's a limitation or it relieves the pain a little bit to the losing community for a 5-year period. You are still getting 50% of the taxes for that first 5 years. If the company that moves ends up backfilling some jobs back in the community that lost, so in other words, $600,000 in payroll moves from Cleveland to Brook Park, but that company backfills $400,000 worth of new positions in Cleveland starting in year 4. So in year 4 and 5, We've only net lost 200,000, and that's the only obligation to share 50% of that, not on the full amount that was lost. So it can be offset if something like that happens.
Alex, if I can interrupt you real quick.
Certainly.
Only because there's so much information in here.
Yes.
If we want to take just a couple seconds, let them ask you some questions where we're at.
However, you're,
Make
Mr.
it-
President, as
Yeah.
my
Make
pleasure.
Make it easier
Yes,
on them instead
certainly.
of. instead of-
However you wish to go about this, I'm fine with.
Yeah, let's take a minute and let these guys ask some questions.
Okay,
on
certainly.
what we've got ascertained so far. Mr. Salvatore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for coming, Alex. I
Oh,
appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
So far, your report's very good. I hope it stays that way.
Okay.
Just kidding. My concern is about when you start talking about payrolls of 500,000 or less aren't affected by the
Correct.
movement from one city to another. But what happens when that payroll exceeds 2 or 3 years into the program? Business grows, and now it's $1.5 million payroll. Is there any,
That's an interesting twist. I guess we can double check, but I think the intent, we didn't lose 500,000, for example. So I think you would still be exempt. The new growth that would happen after that is not a loss to Cleveland. So I think that would be the right interpretation. And if we need to clarification on that point, we can. But that would be my sense, or the interpretation of something like that.
I'd like to know that answer. The other question is, who monitors it?
Our economic development staff monitors it on the Cleveland side. They're the ones that are monitoring on our side.
And when you mentioned that some businesses that left Cleveland are now looking to go back to Cleveland, how many is that, do you know?
It's been a handful, I would say. And it's not necessarily left Cleveland but coming back. They may have been in the suburb all along, but are looking to come downtown in some cases. In 10 years' time, I'm thinking maybe 3-4 cases that I'm aware of where that's been the case.
And then early on, one last question. On page, there was one section that referred to Brook Park Heights, and I was just wondering where,
Oh, I apologize. It's
Over
Brook
by our
Park.
house.
My apologies.
what is that just, was that supposed to be something else?
I edited in other communities that has heights in it, so.
Okay, I just
My
wanted to make
bad.
sure that you
No.
didn't change our name or something. I didn't know, I wasn't aware of it.
My bad. I
right,
apologize
Thank you.
profusely for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Anyone else with a question? Follow up on Mr. Salvatore's question, Alex. So Cleveland's Economic Development Director monitors that income variance when a city moves into Brook Park or vice versa, or into Cleveland or back to Brook Park in this instance.
Correct.
This were taking place. Is it suggested that other municipality do the same? As a check and balance?
I would think that would not be a bad thing, correct. Just to have your economic development just keep track of businesses moving back and forth from Cleveland to Brook Park, I would think would be a good thing, yes.
Great, thank you. Don't see anyone else. If you'd like to continue, please do so.
Okay, should I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I think I'm back on page 8. Now we're getting into the heart of the water main elements of this. We continue to perform repairs and maintenance on distribution system as we do today. But again, we must own the asset for us to legally do capital reinvestment in it. So again, you agree to transfer to us all rights and title to the distribution system. And if there are any easements, for example, that go along with those mains, we need to make sure that we are at least grantees of those easements as well. Normally we are anyway, but any such rights. And I don't know if this is the case in Brook Park or not, but there is a little nuance. If you happen to have an asset that, let's say, you replaced on your own dime 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and you took out debt, you did it with a bond, and it was part of a road project, for example, and there is now debt associated with that asset, that water main. That particular water main can't come over to us until you've satisfied the debt. It's just too legally complex. So I would say most folks that take debt, that do bonding, maybe 20, 25, 30 years or something like that. The reality is that That's very young in the life of a water main. You're not going to have issues with it. Once the debt is satisfied, the bond is paid off, then the water main would transfer to us. And so going forward, our obligation to do replacement on it is assumed at that point in time. But it was a little, again, legal nuance there about mains that may have debt associated with it. I mentioned earlier, if you want to revert back to your current version of the water service agreement, you can do that. However, if we have and you get the distribution system back with that. However, if we've invested money in that, okay, if we invested $1 million, let's say, in some main replacements in Brook Park, and you decide to take it back, you have to pay us back the prorated portion of what we've invested. We assume a 100-year life of a water main, and we just do simple straight line depreciation. So if at year 25 you decide you want it back, you would owe us 75% of that $1 million, if you will, to reimburse us for what we've invested in the distribution system in the meantime. Okay. And in consideration then of transferring those water mains to us, we now undertake capital reinvestments. A quick note about fire hydrants, that is part of the distribution system, that is what transfers to us. Now, the heart of this program, the purpose of this program is to replace aging infrastructure. That's what it's about. And I think Brook Park probably is mostly a built-out community at this point in time. There are other communities that are not. The purpose of this program is to not bring water mains to currently unwatered areas, to an undeveloped area, for example, and put a new main where one does not exist. We don't do that out of this program. Again, its intent is to replace old infrastructure. New hydrants go with new mains, so that's not what we're doing here, okay? We continue to do hydrant replacement and repair as we do today, but what we did clarify is suburban fire departments do routine maintenance. They flush them, they grease them, they paint them, or the service department. That obligation still remains with the local community, but everything else becomes ours. Then again, the heart of this program is the main replacements that we're doing. Twice a year, the communities that have signed the new agreement submit to us those water mains that they would like considered for main replacement. Again, the communities propose to us. We have a technical review committee that scores all of those water mains based on a objective criteria, and this criteria has been tweaked over the years, and we've used a committee of suburban engineers to help fine-tune this. This is not something just unilaterally the Division of Water came up with. It's a scoring system that the suburbs have part and parcel been along with us to come up with a good, fair system, okay? And so twice a year we evaluate it, and those that score the highest are those mains that are then selected for consideration. Again, we do this in the spring and fall. At the bottom of page 9 are listed the criteria that we now use. Again, this has been tweaked recently. The most important criteria is break rate, okay? On average, throughout the distribution system, water mains break for every 100 miles of pipe. On average, you get about 30 to 35 main breaks a year. That's kind of average. If you have a particular main that's breaking 3 times, 5 times, 10 times that normal rate, that says that's an excessive failure rate, that there must be hot soil, excessive corrosion, or soil loading conditions, or something is going on to attack that main. A main with a very high break rate like that gets a lot of points. This criteria has the highest weight to it if it's breaking a lot. Customers aren't getting the level of service they should. They're being put out of service maybe a couple times a year. It's just too much. So again, that's the highest one. We also have introduced a new criteria if there are recent main breaks over the last 5 years. Our database on the first category is a 30-year look back we look at for how the mains are performing. However, if it's just recently starting to ramp up in break history, if you look over the 30-year history, it may not look so bad, but if you focus just on the more recent 5 years, you can see it's starting to ramp up. So now we give some points where it looks like it's starting to get into a higher failure mode. Fire flow deficit, this is something most fire chiefs feel very strongly about. When that water main first went in 70 years ago, for example, it may have delivered to that neighborhood 1,500 gallons a minute, let's say, for firefighting purposes. And most fire departments would say that's great in a residential neighborhood. But because of the internal corrosion that can go on, if you've ever seen an inside of an old water main where it's kind of, it's hardening of the arteries almost, it's corroded down and the capacity is much less, and maybe you're only getting 400 or 500 gallons a minute out of a main like that, and that is bordering on being insufficient for fighting a fire. If it's demonstrated that a water main is not meeting what it ought to for fire protection, you get points for that. If there are recurring water quality problems, if it's tuberculated or rusted on the inside and you get recurring red water problems in a neighborhood, you'll get some points for that. If you're doing the project in conjunction with a road rebuild, for example, we think that's a prudent way to do infrastructure reinvestment. It's a good way to do coordinated work. So you get some points if you're doing it in a coordinated way like that. Transmission benefits means if you're doing a main drag down your street, for example, Holland Road or something like that, and there's a lot of side streets that come off of it, the fire improvement on the main street you're doing also has some spillover benefit to the side streets that come off of it. So if you're doing a main like that, you're getting extra benefit and you get a few extra points because of the extra benefit that you do there. The last criteria that we added recently, post-Flint, Michigan, is lead service lines. If your water main is replacing lead service lines, you get extra points for that. And kind of the magic number is 1954. Pre-1954, service connections in Cleveland were primarily made out of lead. So if you got housing stock pre-1954, you probably got a significant amount of lead. And on our website, we have a map showing every community and roughly how much lead is in. It's broken down by census tract. So you can kind of see where lead distribution is based on records that we do have.
Great.
So, yes.
All right, I'll hold you there. Let
Certainly.
these guys ask some questions up to that point.
Certainly.
Mr. Scott?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming, Alex.
Certainly.
One real quick question. We're just on this fire flow deficit. Who evaluates or tests the line for the fire flow, the amount?
So generally what happens is we have crews that can do that. We also use a computer model, a hydraulic model that will simulate what the distribution system, we use a combination of both. So what will typically happen if let's say you want to replace a main on a certain street, your engineer will make an application to us. And if there is, let's say, a commercial or industrial property that needs a very high amount, 3,000 gallons a minute, for example, they will state what the need is, okay? And there's a standard set of calculations that all engineers know how to do. So they will say, based on this type of building, we need 2,500, 3,000 gallons a minute. And then we will calculate what's available currently with the distribution system. And if there's a shortfall, then there's a pretty straightforward formula that calculates what the points are. So again, we will use, again, the engineer determines what the need is, and we will determine what is actually there based on a combination of using hydraulic modeling and actual field tests.
So there's really no way of physically checking to see what the amount is?
Yeah, when I say a field test, that is exactly what we do. We come out, we hook up gauges on hydrants, we flow it, and we measure what is there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mancini?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, thanks for coming.
You're very welcome.
A very good presentation. A couple things real quick is where we're on this subject. You had mentioned 100 miles and the brakes and things of sort like that. It seems to me when you have a problem, like when one's, it's what you said 35 times, how often does that happen? Because I really don't know anywhere in Brook Park that's theoretically happened where it keeps breaking the same one. We probably, I'm sure our engineer Ed would know a little more than me, but I'm sure we had one maybe break once or twice, but continuously, like how often does that happen?
Well, I do have coming up, I do have a map in here that kind of shows a few years ago we did an assessment based primarily on break rates. It's not the full, all 6, 7 criteria used here. It was a simplified set of criteria, but main breaks was the primary one that we used. And you will see that we do have some water mains that do have high break rates on them. And again, well, if you want,
No,
there at the bottom of
fine.
page 10 is a map that kind of shows where we have records. And I do, what I have suggested to all communities contemplating, if you want your engineer to get into detailed discussion with us about specific streets and mains, more than happy to share information back and forth, you know, and show what our records show.
Okay, and one more, if I may, you brought up communities. One of the things I think here in Brook Park, we don't get a lot of credit for with our service department. We kind of do our little job with the calcium, you had called it like arteries, and we kind of clean ours as continuous as we can. I think we do as best as we can. Maybe not all communities do that. Do you kind of consider that a problem at all? I mean,
Well, I'm wondering if what you're speaking to is sewers, maybe?
more or less.
Probably, but I don't think you're cleaning the drinking water mains, which is
No,
what this
no.
program is about. And they're entirely different, and
Yeah, I didn't think you'd cover that, so,
Yeah.
I mean, but I just wanted to put that out there. So
Okay.
if you can get that back to whoever, because I think that's one of the things we
Okay.
don't get credit for when we get backups and flooding, as it runs north, I believe, so, but that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Mancini. Mr. Salvatore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alex, a few minutes earlier, you mentioned about, unless I misunderstood, did you say the water mains have about a 100-year life expectancy?
that's what there's not absolute science to that. And in our criteria, if you see, we do not have age. However, as a rough ballpark, if you're looking broadly at the entire scope of all 3,600 miles of, let's say, suburban water, suburban mains, some will argue, I've heard some people argue as young as 75 years for life of water main. Some will say 100, some will say as many as 130, 140 years. You know, I think most in the industry think along the lines of about 100 years
Okay.
for life of water mains.
Is there a life expectancy for the lines going to the houses?
The service connections?
Yes.
You know, I don't know that there's hard studies per se on that. I guess I could put it this way. We have about 440,000 service connections in our system. We have to repair or replace about 3,000 a year that fail. So maybe that gives a little ballpark for what the failure rate is on service connections themselves.
Okay, now, under the section of the report on page 8, where the suburban fire departments will continue to perform routine hydrant maintenance, flushing, greasing, painting, et cetera. Now, would our department be reimbursed in any way if we were a part of this agreement, or is there a difference being in or out?
No. One, there's no difference in or out, and these are obligations of the local communities. Either way, whether you sign or not, the local communities continue to do this without reimbursement, based, again, on the existing language that is in the water service agreement.
Is there a formula that you have to follow within the agreement that you have to flush them 5 times a year, 10 times a year?
You know, we're actually going through that with the Cleveland Fire Department right now. We see it vary. I would say the most common frequency, most communities we tend to see is once a year. They try to hit every hydrants. Some communities we see once every 2 years. Other communities as much as twice a year.
Okay.
I would think once a year is not a bad frequency.
Okay, and then if you could, I hate to keep asking all these questions.
Sure.
And slowing down your report,
No
not you only
problem.
have a couple pages left, but when you talk about if we rebuild a road and you would participate somehow in the water lines, if I'm understanding you correctly, then you referred to a point system.
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that point system? How would we benefit?
So everything else being equal, okay? Let's say you have one water main that you propose to do as a standalone project, and you're not doing a road rebuild, okay? Your engineer would submit to us, and we would score those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 criteria, and there would be a score associated with it, okay? All the projects that all the suburbs submit to us get scored that way. If the other project you submit is in conjunction with a roadway project, you would get a higher score as a result of being done in conjunction with the roadway rebuild. And part of that is because your roadway project is really what's doing the pavement restoration. And so because we don't have to do as much road restoration because your road project is doing it, we benefit by getting a little bit less we have to reimburse just for the water portion, but in exchange you get higher points as part of the project. And we see of the suburbs who are submitting much of a trend towards a lot of communities doing just this, of submitting them in conjunction with a roadway project that they're looking to do.
Okay, my final question, again, on the rebuilds. If we're getting involved in replacing the full replacement on a road, and let's say we're only 50, 60 years into the lines, is there a criteria used that it would make sense just to replace it, even though they're really not bad yet, but as long as we're replacing the road, we'd replace the water lines as well?
Well, you know, and some communities have raised that issue. We still go by what the scoring system comes up. It is only one scoring system. We have told the Council of Governments at any point if they want to revisit what the scoring criteria is, and essentially we view it as theirs, not so much ours, that we're open to that. But I think, you know, we're spending $15 million a year on this, okay? And what the will of the Council of Governments has been over the years, if the main is performing well, and it looks like it's got many, many years of life, yeah, maybe decades of life left, if it's got 30, 40 years left to go, do I spend that $1 million there or on another main where the break rate is excessive, where it's really high, or where the fire flow is really in bad shape? And the COG has pretty much given us clear direction that they want the worst performing mains to be the ones that are addressed, that are prioritized in this program. And that's currently how it's playing out.
Okay, I could understand that if you looked at it and said, well, the water lines are going to outlive the new road, that would make sense. So that would make a lot of sense. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bergio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the communities that are already part of the old agreement, is this just an amendment to that? Are they automatically grandfathered into this, or do they have to sign and renew this completely?
There is a, well, I wonder if you could ask your question one more time to make sure I'm understanding it
The
clearly.
communities that are already part of the agreement with the
The new
divisional-
agreement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this an amendment that all those cities have to sign on to for the new agreement that has come about?
There are, and I do have the list in here, there are 35 direct service communities who have signed this, who are part of this program now, who have signed the new agreement, and all of them have signed the new version of the water service agreement. There are new documents that all of them have executed.
Okay. Okay. When is the deadline for the new agreement that's come about? Is there a deadline to?
Well, I would say the most critical thing to think about is our twice-a-year scoring system, and we will be soliciting, or we will be taking nominations from communities who've signed the agreement in mid-July, I believe. So if you're executed by mid-July, then you'd be eligible to participate in our next round. If not, otherwise the next round coming would be spring of 19.
Oh, so you.
I would say that's the most important
Okay, so
timeframe to
you're not
think
missing
of.
it completely if you don't have it by July. You could still revisit this
Yeah,
next
absolutely.
year. Okay.
Yes,
all right.
yes.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Just one quick question. So there's 35 communities in the program with $10 to $15 million a year spent. Does that mean we'll be competing on for that funding to get some of the projects done?
Yes, so the way the water service agreement, this amended agreement was originally crafted, we have the obligation to spend $10 million a year. We voluntarily, Cleveland did, chose to ramp that up to $15 million a year. We are having internal discussions now about whether we ramp that up some more. Right here and now today, I can't say what that final number may or may not be. You know, there's discussions all the way up to 20 million perhaps, ramp maybe phased in over a number of years perhaps, is something that's being talked about. Again, there's no commitment. I think one of the things that we'd have to think about, if there was a strong desire among the communities to take it all the way up to 30, 35, $40 million a year. I mean, we don't have a printing press. in the basement. Everything we do is fundamentally supported by water rates. So there would have to be a discussion with the Council of Governments and the communities of that time is their willingness to support rates in order to support that level of reinvestment in the distribution system. So we're open to that discussion. Frankly, we're water professionals, and the more reinvestment we can do, the better. But we're sensitive to rates as well, and concerns about affordability and things like that as too.
One more question. Does this agreement change current rates in any manner?
It does not. It does not. So your rates are not changed whether you sign this agreement or not.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Poindexter. Alex, continue on page 10.
Okay, thank you. I do have a graph there showing our understanding of the miles of pipe that are in Brook Park. 71 total miles of pipe in Brook Park. 58 miles of it, you see a great number installed in the 50s. So that is main that's 60 years and plus old perhaps in some cases. And the rough rule of thumb is $1 million a mile to replace pipe. So water mains are expensive. It's by far the most expensive group of assets we have. Our water mains in the system, the mains we own, are over $1 billion in value that we have. So again, it is extremely expensive. And if it's not for 20 more years until it's breaks, well, every community has to evaluate for themselves. But one of the ways to view it, I think, is in the long term. Ultimately, this will become the obligation of Brook Park if you choose not to sign up to this agreement. So the sooner you get in, the sooner you can start potentially partaking of the dollars of the program and doing replacement. The map on the bottom of page 10, and I don't know how well you can read it, but again, we did a scoring of these mains a number of years ago. Again, with a simplified criteria, not exactly this one, but if you look closely, you can see some pipes that are in red, and those are the ones that had high break rates, primarily driving that criteria. So those are the ones that we identified a number of years ago. But again, more than happy to engage, whether it's the engineer or service director, or anybody from the administration or anyone for Brook Park regarding candidates. And if there are specific means you want us to pre-score, just to see how it would shake out, for example, we'd be happy to work with you on that as well. We've made presentation to most of the communities now. There is a little slightly different version for the wholesale communities we serve. There are several other communities considering right now signing the new agreement, Parma being very notably one. Your neighbor is considering signing the new agreement. At the bottom of page 11, you can see the list of communities who have signed. And what I also encourage all communities contemplating this, feel free to reach out and see what their experience is with this program. And I would think fairly universally you're going to get good comments about how the program is being run and the benefits that they're getting. We were worried 10 years ago when this project was started, our ability to keep up and manage this and ramp something up from nothing, but it has worked very well. And again, I encourage you to talk to any of these communities you wish and get their experience. The graph again on the next page shows how we've ramped up to 15 million. There's a little bit up and down depending on contract year versus award year. The table on the bottom of page 12 shows what we've done, 284 projects to date, 530,000 feet, that's over 100 miles of pipe. $118 million has been spent or committed on this program to date. So we have met our word. We've done what we said we would do, and of those, 207 are complete so far. One last thing, contracting, if you choose to sign this agreement, letting of the work, if you will, can be done one of two ways. If you want us to design it and to construct it, we're happy to do that. So we'll use our designers to design it. We would let the construction contractors build it. That is not the preferred model of the communities, however. Almost all of them prefer where they undertake the design and they let the construction contract. And in such a case, we reimburse. And technically, the way that works is you do have to front the design money, get it out, complete the design, put it out to bid, get bids back. We review that with you, make sure we're all okay, that good competitive bidding processes were used, and then we cut you a reimbursement check. We cut you a check that compensates you for the design you already did. It will include what the construction cost will be based on the bid that you've taken, and it also has some dollars in there for construction administration for your engineer. So that you don't have to front the construction dollars, the big piece of this, if you will, that will cut you the check at the time, and if you need that money to actually award the contract, you'll have the check in place to be able to do that, if that's your preferred model. So that's the essential elements of this program, and Mr. President, if there are additional questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them.
Great, I appreciate it. Great presentation. Gentlemen, questions? Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you. On the page page 11, when you talk about the 39 communities that have already signed to date, it doesn't show anyone signing up for 2018. Is that because you weren't offering it in 2018? Or
None have, to date, have executed. Several are close, I would put it that way. Okay, I would expect in the next month or two, you're probably going to see a couple more add. We could see as many as 5 or 6 sign up this year, possibly. But again, each community decides on their own.
it seems like a little light over the last couple of years, but you had a huge sign up around the 07.
That was the initial year, and so there was a pent up, or if you will, a demand initially. And those who are ready to jump at the time all signed up in year 1. That was the inaugural year. And since then, it's been, I would say it's average maybe 3, 4 a year, something like that.
Well, it shows that the first year was 05. Well, you had-
Brunswick is a little bit different deal. They actually predated this agreement a little bit, but they were grandfathered in, if you will, into this program.
Okay.
2007 was really the first year of this formally being offered to all the communities.
Okay, is there a copy of the agreement that's available? For
Yes, I'm trying to remember, Mayor, if I sent that to you yet or not, the draft agreements. If I've not, I'll make sure we send that to you. There's a few set of documents that we send, so we'll make sure we get that right to you.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very
Thank you. Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. In addition to the replacement of the assets, falling on your, on your responsibility, can you think of any other incentives that would be for us to give you all of our assets?
Well, interesting. I would say that there are 2 hang-ups that communities have had about signing this agreement. One is the economic development, and if they're interested in heavily poaching still, they may be less interested. The other is the notion of giving up their assets. I would argue this way, and again, the former Mayor Zanotti made this case too. Those water mains are already providing you the benefit. The economic development, the folks being able to use water is there, and you get that benefit as is. And he called it, and I think there's a lot of merit to it, it's really more liability than asset to you at this point. It's $58 million facing you at some point down the road. You don't lose any of the benefit of that asset being there in place, but you do get the benefit of getting dollars from us to do reinvestment in them. So again, but not to diminish your point, it has been an issue that a couple communities have struggled a little bit with giving up that asset.
And just one other question. Let's say we have a project and it, we go through the scoring process and it's not as high as some other communities, but we have a need to replace it. I mean, then do we replace it at our own cost at that point?
Yeah, that question has come up a couple times now, and we're working with our law department, and I think what we would look to do is carve that out, okay? Give it back to you, essentially, if you will, so that you can then do the reinvestment that you choose to do of your own. And then, again, if you use bonds or whatever, 20 years hence, then you can transfer it back to us, and it becomes our obligation. So that mechanism isn't in place yet, but we're looking to do exactly that. A couple communities have have asked that exact question. So it is definitely, there's no reason why we would oppose something like that in principle. It's more reinvestment being done. So it's a good thing from our viewpoint. So we're going to work very hard to see if we can't get that in place as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poindexter. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, Alex, I'd like to thank you for coming with a presentation. I think everybody's well informed.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Mr. President, thank you so very much.
Mayor?
Alex, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming. And thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'd like to go to the engineer for a moment. Ed, off the top of your head, if we'd have had this, let's say, and again, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, since 2007, what's your best guess we could have saved as a city? I know I'm probably giving you an Excedrin headache, and if you want to think about it and answer it at the next meeting, that's fine.
I'm just trying to think. In 2011, I believe we did Sheldon Road, a water line on Sheldon Road, between between 71 and Smith. We did Brookdale just last year. We finished that. That would have been eligible. I think there was another one. It's just escaping me right now, but I would say somewhere in the ballpark of $1 million in water lines that we've, in water work that we've spent on some of our road projects that could have been eligible.
Just over the last couple of years here. Okay. Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like to give council the opportunity to digest this, and perhaps at the next meeting, we have our economic development director. You know, we can talk to him, because the economic development part of it was a bit of a hang-up, as Alex stated, but I think we can overcome those hurdles, and if I'm correct, and Rick, you've been around a while, I think council may have passed this agreement, but for some reason administration never signed it. Are you familiar with that at all, Carol or Ed, at all? That at one time it was passed by council?
Carol, go ahead.
Yes, I believe there were some issues with regard to the community reinvestment rate. We have a different one than Cleveland, and I believe the problem was, despite contact with the Cleveland Law Department, we couldn't resolve that issue, and we were fearful that the rate that we currently have would end up rolling back to a lesser rate, and that was a concern and why it wasn't signed. We tried to work that out with the Cleveland Law Department, and also, I believe we sought an opinion from, I think it was the Attorney General, but I'll pull up that file folder and share that with you.
Do we have any idea roughly what years that was?
Wasn't that 10 years ago?
So you're looking
2007,
at
2007,
2008 on its inception. Okay. Carol?
I think it was 2016. I could be wrong. I may be misspeaking as the year, but I think it was 2016.
It was.
I thought we
think it
signed something
was.
a couple years ago, yeah.
Yeah, that would have been the previous council.
Yeah, I was referring to the original one, which is.
The original, yeah, that's what I was asking, what the
Yeah,
original
the original
one
one was about 10 years ago.
2016.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor?
And if I may again, I understand it's a big step. I think we ought to take our time, be prudent, and do our due diligence. We'll have Greg here, also the law director, the engineer, the economic development director, and we'll see which way we wanted to go. I wanted to bring it forward. I, for one, think it's a good idea, and let's just see where it goes.
Chairman,
Mr. Salvatore?
a motion was discussed.
Support.
Motion, this was discussed, properly supported. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Salvatore?
Yes.
Orcutt?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Poindexter?
Yes.
Mancini?
Yes.
Stem?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion is approved. Item number 1 has been discussed. Moving on to item number 2 under discussion. Proposed changes to the 2018 Caucus Council meeting and summer session schedule. Councilman Mancini, per Council President Vecchio. Mr. Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was a piece we kind of touched on maybe a few weeks ago, and maybe just a little bit, we all had maybe a little different ideas. I thought it was brought, I loved what was brought, but maybe everybody just didn't maybe have the time to maybe consume it. So Mr. Scott, I thought, did a pretty good job putting it together, so I thought I'd reapproach it, and you know, with the summer coming around, So far, if it keeps raining, we might not have a summer, but with the summer coming around, maybe this is something we have to look at. And,
Jim, pull your microphone up a little bit. No, the whole thing, so it's up closer to you.
all right. So, that's where we're at. So I'd like to hear everybody's opinion on that, on this, if everybody wants to go item by item or whatever. I mean, I'm looking at this as council as a whole, but I'd sure like to get this, wrapped up for all of us. I know summer vacations, things of that sort, so I just want to hear what everybody has to say on it.
Council, I suggest we start with the first one, with the bold printed removal of the following caucus meeting dates, and then we'll move down to each one. That way
That's
we've gone
fine.
through.
That's fine. Okay.
Mr. Scott?
Yeah, like I said, Jimmy said I originally brought this up a couple weeks ago. Basically, my idea was removing the last caucus meeting of the 4 months. We always have, like it's been said in the past, anything that comes up that we need is a special council meeting, we call it. I don't see an issue. That happened last year during our summer recess. We had special meetings after special meetings last year, so obviously it does happen. But I just brought it up with the idea that the last caucus meeting of the 4 months, I didn't know if it was, our communication is a lot better than it was for the past 2 years. Let's put it that way. So basically, that's why I brought it up a couple weeks ago, and there was no movement on it, so be it. But I'm glad Jimmy brought it back up again.
So, on that removal, there would actually be 5, because down further is the December 26th caucus meeting due to the Christmas holiday.
Well, that was another.
Okay, that was gonna be the third, but.
Right, but I'm
That's
saying,
fine.
though, let's try to keep it in some semblance of order. If we put them all together right there, it'd make it a little bit easier for everybody to follow.
Again, on that, I thought that we'd bring this just with the caucuses there, and then we go to summer session and changes removal and propose additions. I'm fine with that if that's what we want to do. I mean, obviously, it's the 26th, so
I'm just
probably
trying
should have whacked
to,
it.
trying to make it an easier read for everybody to follow.
Okay, problem if that's okay. I mean, there's no issue with that, but.
Mr. Poindexter?
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, so far this year, we've had a meeting every Tuesday except for the 5th Tuesday, and after speaking with various departments and stuff, it seems like sometimes extra time in between meetings would help prepare. Yeah, we might have more on the agenda for those meetings in between, but I think preparation would be a lot more easier, let's say, if we had more time in between, and I think we'd have a little bit more research time on different subjects, and I think that extra time in between would be beneficial to council. I don't think it would be a hindrance. And as it was said, we could always bring forward a special meeting if necessary.
Mr. Salvatore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As one councilman, I'm not in favor of canceling any of these meetings. And when we added the caucus prior to the council that we had in the past, that extra caucus meeting was designed to have discussion prior to the regular council meeting in case there was something that needed to be introduced under an emergency measure, or if something needed to be discussed with. That was set up to be a 30-minute meeting, not to be a regular caucus. And I think taking these meetings out, you're taking away where you conduct the business prior to the vote on business coming before the city of Brook Park and before city council. So as one councilman, I don't think that we should be removing any meetings, especially right now. We have a new administration. We have 50% of the new members of council, and there's a learning curve that goes with this. And the more times that we can assemble and try and work together, I think it will show a definite improvement as we move forward. I wouldn't be interested in looking at any of this until after the first year or maybe even the first term of this group. So I would be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. Mr. Mancini?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The way I'm looking at this is, on Tuesday nights when I'm here, I'm here. I mean, I don't want to be here till 12 o'clock either, and I get that. Councilman Salvatore. But I figure I'm here on Tuesdays, and I'm looking at some of these, and I'm seeing, 3 caucus meetings a month. And I just think at this point, I agree with some of my colleagues, what I've heard. It's a pretty good group here. We tend to work on most things pretty good. We tend to communicate pretty good. And the other thing we have to remember is we'll be going to the rec center at some point here too, so there's gonna be a big process over there. We're gonna be spending a lot of time getting acquainted over there too, so we have to count in that time too. I don't think that'll take away so much of our caucus and council time, but there's gonna be a big training period there too, and I agree with my colleague, Mr. Poindexter. Sometimes these little breaks in here get you more prepared, get you, get your eyes into the reading a little more and getting the feel from what the community feels too when you're out there. So I feel, I don't think that we need to be here every Tuesday night. I think it's a pretty good group that I think we could get away with, escaping on, I'm looking at just four caucus meetings we're letting go theoretically, so. And like Council President Vecchio says, the 26th, which, I don't think any municipality or state government or country government's going to be meeting on that time. But so that's how I feel on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. Mr. Orcutt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I took a look at this, and somebody had said that, well, as we're looking at this first item, the first bold item that you talked about, there's only four dates there. Somebody else mentioned that we're going to be taking off December 26th. But if you actually go through here and you look at every single line item for suggestions that we're making here, you're taking off 4 on that first line item. You're taking off 4 the next one. That's 8. You're switching one for November 6th, which you're just adding to the 13th, a caucus. So you're removing the 6th. So that's 9. Then you're removing December 26th. That's 10. And going into 2019, the way it looks like this, if we take one off for each month, that would be the first 5 months that we've already had this year, that would be 15. And in my arithmetic, we're meeting 44 nights a year. And what you're proposing here is to take off 15. If we do this in 2019, you're taking off 15 evenings of the 44. That's 1/3. And I'm not going to support any of this. Maybe the one for Christmas, but that's, I'll be prepared if the mayor has an emergency on something. I'm going to be prepared to come to work on that, but from what I'm seeing here, there's a lot more than just four meetings. So I won't be supporting this.
Thank you. Just to weigh in on that, currently scheduled going down for the whole year without any of the called special meetings. There were 68 meetings scheduled. We've had 30 plus meetings to date, with another 38 meetings scheduled for the rest of the year. There are 52 weeks in a year, of which we meet bi-weekly is 26. 2 meetings is 54. I mean, there is the point of where you get into analysis by paralysis. And that's something that I think we need to look at. Mr. Bergio, did you have your hand up? Was that us?
No.
I'm sorry. Mr. Scott.
I'm a little confused here. June 26th is 1, September 25th is 2, October 23rd is 3, November 27th is 4, July 24th is 5, December 26th is 6. I don't see 15 days off, 15 meetings. Can you run that again?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Let me write this down.
Through the chair to Councilman Scott. What I was saying is, with this proposed program that you have right here for the year 2019, if you take a caucus, your plan is to take a caucus meeting off every month, correct?
No.
No?
We're taking summer recess,
And how long will summer recess be for?
4 weeks, which is, we're off on the fifth Tuesday anyways. So there's 3 days there.
What days do we have scheduled for July?
Your current July schedule is July 10th, 2 meetings, July 24th, 2 meetings, followed by August 7th and August 21st, 2 of each. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 meeting dates scheduled for June, which totals 6 meetings.
We did set our schedule though for July and August already earlier this year, correct?
You guys set the schedule in February.
Correct. And what days, what weeks will we be meeting?
Your current dates in July, July 10th, July 24th.
Okay, so this summer session, this July 24th and July 31st, it's on there? We already have those scheduled off?
31st, we don't need.
No,
Okay.
your current dates, the dates that I just gave you are the dates that you're currently scheduled for your meetings.
Okay. And the other part of that month, we were scheduled off?
That would be, well, these would be your normal dates, so you're not having a caucus in between. You're only having caucuses prior.
I thought we were gonna have, I thought we were meeting two weeks in July and 2 weeks in August. And are we amending what we're doing? I'm confused as well, too.
The dates that I'm reading here, summer session, week of July 24th, which means that that week would be no meeting, July 24th. There's already one that's not scheduled July 31st because it's the 5th Tuesday. So you would, as it stands right now, looking at this, the July 24th meetings would be eliminated. So you would only have a July 10th on there.
And then what do you have for August?
August, we have 4 meetings scheduled for August. So August has the 7th and the 21st. So they are proposing to eliminate the 7th. So you would eliminate 1 meeting in August. You're eliminating 1 set of meetings in July, one set of meetings in August as is currently proposed.
Okay, so that's 2 there. So that's 4, 6, 8, 7, 8. So Mr. Scott, it's only 8 instead of 10. I was a little bit confused with what was going on there because I thought we already set summer's schedule. And from discussion that we've had, I thought we were just going to be swapping a few weeks from what I understood from our discussion. So that's a little bit different than what was explained to me. So I apologize, but I'm glad we clarified all that. That's all I have.
Great, and getting those numbers down, as Mr. Orcutt just said, would take us down to a total of 67 meetings to this point for the year.
Point of clarification, I wasn't talking meetings, I'm talking meeting dates.
Correct.
Dates.
Correct.
I'm not talking, so the numbers I was using are different than what you're using. You're using meetings, using caucus and council.
Right.
What I was using are the dates that were there and what we're doing. If we're gonna do this for 2019, it looks like we're gonna take away about a third of it. I know that the people put me here to get some work done. I know that the mayor and economic development, they've got a lot of things on their agenda, and I'm prepared to meet as often as we can to help move this city forward.
Right. Right. And don't forget, we have the opportunities to call a special meeting at any time, as we have.
Exactly, and I also basing it off the fact that we've actually been running our caucus meetings, you know, they're jam-packed, and we're stopping them, pausing them, and coming back.
Mr. Mancini?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that, and they are, and it's good that they're bringing a lot of things. And, you know, obviously, we're still a little bit, with the roads program, we're still dealing with that. And I think that is probably the reason maybe here a little bit we're still extended a little bit. I know through all my years, and Councilman Salvatore, Councilman Bergio, and the mayor, they've been here a long time. Is there ever really a time where you guys are really jammed up in the summer where, because a lot of meetings when I popped into, it just, it didn't seem like they were real long meetings unless you had something of urgency or something happened or there was something proposed, something went on in the summer. I always thought the budget process, things of that sort were the big things. Obviously, the past 2 years, we had some pretty long meetings, but if I stand corrected, most of them were during the winter. And if they weren't, there were special meetings that were in the summer, some on Saturdays. But again, they were special meetings. And I just feel this group's good enough. I feel the administration's bringing things pretty good to us, pretty prompt, pretty professionally, and we could tend to work amongst ourselves. That's what council presidents and the administrations are for. I don't think a lot of things I think sometimes go a little too far than they have to. That's my personal opinion since I've been up here. Not a lot. A lot of good things been done, but I can remember coming here in the summer many a time and meetings weren't that long, so that's I'm gonna leave it at that. But things were done professionally then, and they were done.
All right, well, I think we've all went around. I think we should,
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you. I just want to interject a little bit here. What we're discussing here, I know it's been described two different ways. It's meetings or meeting dates, and I really believe that the conversation should be meeting dates because the caucus prior to the council is a 30-minute scheduled meeting, and it's on the night of a scheduled council meeting, and it was for the purpose of moving legislation freely through the system, having a place for the legislation to land and be able to discuss it and move it forward or backwards or back to committee. That's just something that, to my opinion, it provides proper protocol for legislation. It's not adding another meeting date, it's adding another meeting to a date that already exists. For the summer session, it says here the weeks of August 7th and 14th. We have nothing scheduled on the 14th.
Well, what he's saying is the weeks of. So as I interpret it, it's the weeks of would be summer session.
Yeah, but don't,
Correct.
we have to be specific in nature. You're gonna cancel a meeting that doesn't exist.
We can be specific and we're discussing it at the moment. So as you said it, at that point, to specify exactly what you're going to do is probably where we're at. So right now, for clarity, it's the weeks of. Those 2 weeks are the weeks of the proposed summer session.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have the floor. How can it be the week of August 7th when we have a sketch? For the 7th, we have a date, so it's not the week of, but for the 14th, we don't have a meeting. So it's a week of the 14th, but it's really the 21st. And we have 2 meetings scheduled for the same date, a caucus and a council. And I just, for a point of clarification, I just want to be specific in nature to clarify that the 2 meetings on the same date are just that. It's just 1 day, 2 meetings to conduct business.
Per my discussion with the president.
Can I finish, or do you
Well,
always
you're
want to
asking a
interrupt me?
question, sir.
I'm not done yet. I want to answer a question that my colleague, Mr. Mancini, brought forward, and I'd
Okay.
like to finish, if I may.
Answer your question, then
Everybody
we'll
else-
go to Mr. Mancini for
Okay,
clarification.
Mr. Mancini brought up the fact that, the council in the past was very successful, and they did a few things, but then when the meetings were short and et cetera. But I just want to bring up the past, as it relates to summer session. The reason why council took the liberty of setting dates, so that the administration would know if there's something coming up, rather than have to call a special meeting, he already has a date set aside that he can work and set his agenda for that date. Just like every member of council. If you're working on legislation and you want to have something introduced, you know that you can do it based on the already approved summer schedule, which is July 10th and July 24th and August 7th and August 21st. Now, I did talk to a couple members of council, and if you wanted to make some adjustments there to have a longer period of shutdown time, then that's fine, let's discuss it. But I just don't see any reason to start canceling meetings. And as far as the one, if they're doing it individually and separately, I appreciate that they're taking it into consideration, because when we get down to the Christmas week, which should be separate from anything else, I could understand that. I could understand canceling the December 26th meeting unless, for some reason, there's some emergency from Christmas through the end of the year, and the mayor needs to pass something under an emergency measure, then we have to be prepared to meet. But, Mr. Chairman, other than December 26th, I just don't see any need for any changes at this time. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, if we go ahead and remove these dates, it doesn't do anything to the following date, so the mayor can look at the schedule and say, hey, there's a date coming up here, I can put it on. And if it's something important, he can call a special meeting. I don't see where this changes any of his ability to put it onto a future council meeting, other than he can call a special meeting if necessary. I mean, if we're working on legislation and we can't wait till the next scheduled meeting, we can call a special meeting and get 3 of our colleagues to sign for a special meeting and move it forward that way. I just don't see where this really hurts us. We have the flexibility in our rules where we can call meetings when necessary. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Orcutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So by looking at this, I'm going to assume that going into 2019, if we were to go with this pattern, we would be removing 1 meeting date per month.
Well, hold on a minute, because we're not even discussing 2019.
I'm trying to see what pattern and see why are we taking off June 26th?
Well, I would understand that, but I would say that we're probably better to contain ourselves just on 2018.
Why are we taking off September 25th? What I'm getting at is this. If we follow this pattern, we will be taking off 6 weeks between the months of July and August, and we'll be taking off for the other 10 months, one workday out of those months. That'll be 16 workdays that we will be taking off. And I wanted to make sure that that's the way that we were planning on doing this. Is that, Mr. President, is that the plan?
Point of clarification.
No, that's what I'm trying to figure out, is I'm trying to follow you, but I'll take the clarification from Mr. Mancini.
Okay.
Through the chair to Councilman Orcutt, when Rich did this, when I looked at this and chose to bring this, my thought process had nothing to do with 2019. Absolutely nothing. I'm not, I know you brought that up a few times, but our pattern next year could be totally different. A million things could happen. I don't even want to really think that far ahead. My thing was just the schedule, and I think one of the things we keep kind of missing here a little bit is the switch over. I think that's the elephant in the room, over to the community center. So.
Thanks for clarifying.
Can I rebuttal that?
Yeah.
The reason why I did bring that up is because it's the middle of May, and we still don't have our roads program done, and there has been quite a bit of stuff on there. I can't see how we're having this discussion about taking off those many days when we're here at this time. That's all. Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. There's a misconception that, because we're taking these meeting dates off, that we're taking days off of work. I know these days are, meeting dates are days where you display the work you've done since the last meeting. Now, I work twice as hard outside of these meetings to make sure that I have something to report and something to talk about at these meetings. So, in essence, I'm creating more work for myself by taking these meeting dates off, because I can get out in the community and do more with the community. I can do more research. I can go attend Big Creek watershed meeting on a Tuesday because that Tuesday's freed up. So it frees me up for more councilary action. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bergio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of good discussion here, and I hear what Councilman Salvatore is saying. I also agree with Councilman Poindexter. Brings up some pretty good points about being more prepared. I kind of like that. I never thought of it in that sense, but it does give us a little more time to prepare for the next meeting. But I think we should take this. I think 2019 is a separate issue, and like Mr. Mancini said, we don't know what's going to happen in 2019. And the other thing is, if we need to make special meetings, we do that all the time, and I'm sure that we'll all be willing to come to special meetings, and we do that. If the mayor wants to call a special meeting, I think we're going to be doing our due diligence to make sure that we're there. So I think that the 2019 issue, I think that should be something separate, but we should just concentrate on this. And again, I think I agree that if we need to have special meetings, we call special meetings. That's how I view it. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bergio. Mr. Stem.
Thank you.
Last one, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do right here with the first portion and move on.
Thank you, Council President. I'm okay with the caucuses removal. The way I'm looking at 26, if it was removed, we'd have a July 10th caucus, which is the next meeting. And I think that follows suit for the patterns. However, the summer session, I'd like to discuss that more, just with the gap. I think August 7th should remain on there.
We'll move down to the summer session after we finish this. We figure
All
we'd
right,
break this
that's all.
down.
Thank you.
All right, so gentlemen, on this first portion, for the very first portion, as we've discussed, we're going to break this down and take it by bold print. So let's figure out where you want to go. Council needs to decide if they want to make a motion on this or what.
So you're voting for the 4 of them?
For the 4 of them, yes. We'll remove December 26th out of that and leave it down where it's in the other portion. So your very first 4 caucus dates.
Make a motion to place on June 5th, council meeting for verbal approval.
Support.
Motion to place on June 5th, council meeting for verbal approval, properly supported. Discussion. Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Salvatore,
No.
Perugio,
Yes.
Orcutt,
No.
Motion is approved 5-2. Move down to summer session. So we have the weeks of July 24th and July 31st, which is the 5th Tuesday, no meetings scheduled on that date, and weeks of August 7th and August 14th. Mr. Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair of the council, I'm single, and I do a lot of road work out there, and I do a lot of quick day trips, 2-day trip. So I'm gonna kind of leave this one up to you guys a little bit. I think this is the time in here somewhere too, if I'm not stand corrected, Mayor, we hopefully will be moving over, but I'm gonna leave this up to you guys. You guys got, you guys got a lot on your plate too, and you got families there too. I mean, not that I don't have family obligations, but thank you.
Just for your information, Councilman, probably late July, early August is when we'll make the move over to the new council chambers, if all things go according to plan. So, as you know, there's a lot of electronics that have to be done, video type things of that nature. So right now, we're looking at late July, maybe even mid-August, but that's the plan.
Mayor, why you just weighed in on that? Is there a plan for also the movement of files and things of that nature too? Especially considering the fact that council has obviously the history of the city.
Well, actually, you and I discussed that, and I'm going to discuss it with Greg even further, and the law director, as far as getting all those files down. I guess I'm going to give my age here, what you call microfiche, and I'm certain they have something a lot more modern. But that's what we'd like to do, and we're going to have to move those files over. But again, I can't see moving over all those paper files, with the exception being the airport agreement. Since we do have some things going on with them, we have to keep everything in the airport agreement as is until that case comes to its ultimate conclusion.
Thank you. Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. Looking at the way the summer session is currently scheduled, I'm okay with the way it is now. I don't want to see any dates removed from.
What do you mean? The way it's written on here?
The way our schedule is now, where we have a meeting on July 10th and July 24th, and then August 7th and August 21st. I'm okay with keeping that as is.
The current that was voted
Yes.
in February.
Yes.
Mr. Stem?
Thank you, Council President. I agree with Councilman Poindexter for the summer session.
Anyone else? All right, so summer session is going to stay as is, no summer session. Moving down, changes in,
Wait,
I got just for a point of order.
Yep.
Only 2 members spoke, and by 2 people
I asked
speaking.
if
And what
anybody
if somebody
else.
wants to make a motion to move that to the council agenda? I haven't heard from the movers of the changes. I'd like to hear from Richard and from Mr. Mancini, if we could.
Okay.
gentlemen, fight it out. Rich, go
I'm
first.
not gonna fight it out. No, again, I was when I presented this originally. Last year, again, I don't know if you want to call what we had last year a summer recess due to the fact that we had special meetings after special meetings. Again, it'd be nice to plan something out. July 31st, we're not going to be a regularly scheduled meeting. August 7th, we maybe not even have a council chamber, according to the mayor. August 14th, I just picked that because in case, again, council chambers are not ready, what are we going to do? We can't hold meetings. We'll have to hold them back here. I don't even know where we could hold meetings. So basically, I talked to some administration people. They suggested the 31st and the 7th for sure, but I picked the 24th and the 14th also, just for a cushion. You know how construction is, so they're behind the 8 ball right now at the rec center. So basically, it would be nice to maybe even to plan a vacation. We have family members here. I'm quite sure some of them would like to have a little vacation, but like I said, last year and the year before, our summer session was a joke, but I just wanted to put it out there. Basically, just to cover our butts for the move.
Mr. Bergio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the chair of the mayor, you mentioned construction could be late July, early August. What is your feelings on the situation as far as not being ready? Is that something? I guess nobody knows for sure, but to me that seems like it could be a problem.
Well, if it is a problem, we can continue to meet here in these chambers, but we would like to have that move over there by that time. Right now, it looks like we'll be able to do that, the late July, mid-August timeframe, that's the target date. But right now, that's where it's at. And you know, Carl, when you're doing construction, you don't know what's going to happen. And the charter clearly states that July and August, you don't have to meet at all. But that's council's prerogative. So right now, Carl, just being a safe side, I'd stick with that late July, August target. If it moves up, I certainly will keep council appraised.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. Looking at the schedule here, we can maybe, I might suggest that we place this on the June 19th caucus prior to for discussion, and maybe the dates might be more clear by then, when the move-in dates could be, and we could potentially, talk about this again and maybe remove those meetings where the move-in dates might happen if it's, closer to the time. That's almost a month later. That's all I have.
Mr. Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to answer Mr. Councilman Salvatore, I mean, we still have 4 weeks of kind of a break, but if I'm not mistaken, I look in August, we have school starting there too. So, and I believe it's a little earlier this year, isn't it? Coming up.
I believe school's
So we're
back
looking at
earlier,
that. We're
yes.
looking at moving. We're looking at a few things. So that Councilman Poindexter might not have too bad of a suggestion, at least on this one. But what I want on a vacation is just everybody to be comfortable with it. I don't want anybody walking out of here. So that's my take, at least on the summer session anyway.
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't think the move has anything to do with should we have a meeting or not. If we haven't moved yet, the meeting will be here. And if we move there and it's dysfunctional, then we can have the meeting at the library. We can have it in the gazebo. We can still have a meeting.
Rick, we can't meet. We can't meet if the equipment's not there. If we don't have the tools to do so,
So
we
we're not,
can't
then
meet.
we'll have it here then.
But if they're in transition to there, it's going there. You're not going to have a meeting here. That's the issue. I think what is amiss by everybody is what all is entailed in the move. And I think it behooves everyone not to take the time to understand that there's more to the move than what everybody's looking at superficially. That's currently where we're at. The move, the undertaking of the move is a little bit larger than what I'm seeing in this discussion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, if for some reason that we are unable to make that move, then we can cancel that particular meeting, but, you know, I don't want to keep moving, bouncing this thing around like a ping pong ball. I mean, let's make the decision tonight. If there's votes here, I believe in the democratic process. 4 votes will make the decision if this gets moved to the council agenda under verbal approval. You know, there's no sense laboring, we're not going to have that answer in a week from now. If we're going to be able to move in July or August or September or June, we're not going to have that answer anyway. The answer is, are we going to cancel summer session? The meetings that are scheduled during our normal summer session. And if somebody makes a motion to move it to the council agenda for verbal approval, so be it. If there's no motion made, then I'd make a motion that this was discussed.
I'd like to get a point of clarification on something, because the mayor brought it up, and I'm actually just sitting here reading the verbiage. Carol, do you have the charter right in front of you for 4.05 on the meeting schedules?
I do, let me pass it up.
I've got it here, and the reason I'm asking is, and just to try to get you to weigh in here and see where it's at, but it says, except that it shall hold regular meetings at least twice each calendar month, provided, however, that it may recess during the months of July and August, subject to the call of the mayor. Is that the mayor's call in that?
No, I would interpret that as the mayor calling a special meeting because there's some kind of an emergency, some issue with the city that needs to be addressed. I don't think it would be subject to the mayor's discretion. That's a reference to the special meetings that would be called below in section B of 4.05.
Thank you. Perfect.
Mr. Chairman, if I may follow up on
Mr.
that
Salvatore.
question? To clarify that, if it's the way it's written, the language in that, it would, the only one that could call a special meeting during summer session, if we had a complete summer session, would be the mayor and council president, and 3 members of council will not have that privilege. Is that correct?
That's certainly one way to interpret it, and I would expect that that's probably past practice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mancini?
Thank you. So we could, 3 things I'm kind of looking at. We could put it back in caucus, think about it. We could take the summer session we're looking at, or we could go, I think, which way, Councilman Salvatore, the original one that we do have. And I don't think everybody, Council President, thinks, I mean, I think it'll be a chore going there. I hopefully it'll be turnkey and it'll be ready over there. Best case scenario, that's what we're hoping for. Will it be? Probably not, but so let's hope against hope. But so we have 3 choices, so thank you.
All right, so, Mr. Orcutt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I know we did have discussion about this, and it's been on our minds for the last week or 2. Is anybody opposed to doing what was brought up, at least during discussion outside the dais, of mayor said late July, early August. So with following those instructions, can we just have the 2 meetings early in July and later in August?
Mr. Scott?
Yeah, if you look at the last one, I made a suggestion that we put on July 17th, so that we do have two regular meetings in July. So we have 2 meetings in July and 2 meetings in August. That was the last one, but we may not ever get down there.
And actually, looking at that, if you look at the summer session, I believe that that's kind of what that's intended, the weeks of July 24th and 31st, which would be the last 2 weeks, and then the first 2 weeks of August would be to eliminate, so I don't, you would have 2 meetings if you wanted in the beginning of July and 2 meetings at the end of August. You're just eliminating the end of July, beginning of August. Is that, am I understanding, is that what you're looking at also?
That's what I was suggesting that we could do to get moving on with this. Obviously, keeping the 3rd off because it's the holiday weekend or holiday for everyone, but possibly the 10th and 17th of July, and then the 21st and 28th of August.
Okay.
That was the original intent.
And I thought that was the original discussion too.
Mr. Mancini?
Thank you, Council President. I'm fine with that.
All right, so then let's put that, if that's what you want to do, to put it on for discussion?
Yes.
Please
All right, so, well, go ahead, Rich.
make motion, place on verbal approval for the June 5th regular council meeting.
All right, so for June 5th, regular council
I'll
meeting,
support that.
to place under verbal approval, the summer session as it's listed on here, with date changes, moving the meetings forward for the month of July and back for the month of August,
No, hold on.
correct?
No, we've got that, that's our fourth proposal on here.
Huh?
We got to vote on that one.
I'm
If you
sorry?
look at the fourth one, it's got proposed addition, discussion of July 17 caucus prior to council meetings.
Okay, right, so that's what I'm saying. So what you're gonna do is, that would be the last one down there. But what I'm saying is, in this motion, you're going to move your July meetings to the beginning of the month, which would be the
10th
10th and the
and 17th.
17th, and then the end of the month in August, which is, what were those dates? I'm sorry.
21st, 28th.
21st and 28th.
Mhm.
Okay. So the motion on the floor properly supported, discussion?
Chairman, just for point of clarification, I want to make sure, we're really not changing July because we already have a July 10th meeting.
Correct.
Yeah, we're not changing the 21st because we already have an August 21st meeting.
Right, so what you would be
The
doing
only
is just adding
change
the
is going to
17th.
be,
17th.
And 28th.
28th of August.
we're going to replace July 24th caucus council with a July 17th.
Correct.
Correct.
Right,
And then we're going to replace the August 7th
with August 28th.
down to August 28th. Correct?
That's what I'm understanding.
That's what it is.
So the only change, we're not really making four changes, we're making two.
Right, 2 wholesale changes for 4 ways. All right, so the motion on the floor properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Motion is approved. That will be on the June 5th council meeting under verbal approval. All right, move down to the next item, changes and or removal of meeting dates. Mr. Mancini?
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, November 6th is, I believe, the general election, and we can move that to the 13th.
Or the
and-
7th, too.
Uh-huh.
We could move it also to the 7th.
Or to the 7th, it's going to be open for discussion. And also the 26th, the caucus meeting, I mean, it's the day after
The
Christmas.
26th of December.
Yeah, so that's obviously what that is. It stands right out at you. Big red light, so, we can move it to the 25th.
I was thinking the 24th, right around 11:59.
Mr. Chairman, point of information, unless I'm reading this wrong, if I may.
Go ahead.
According to the recommendation, it says move November 6th caucus meeting, and we also have a council meeting.
Well, he's a caucus prior and council meeting.
So you're
Yep.
you're moving 2 dates. And you already have a meeting scheduled for the 13th. It's a caucus, we already have a workshop session, which is called a caucus, on the 13th.
Well,
No,
that was-
you've already removed, you already have the, oh, you're right, I'm sorry, you're right, yes. He's 100%.
So, I mean, in
Yes.
past practice, in fact, we just had a problem with it not too long ago, by not changing a date, moving one date further back on election day. So I would recommend that we keep the meeting date, but just change the 6th to the 7th.
I'm good with
So move
that.
Tuesday to
That's what we
Wednesday.
did in the past, and it worked. I will support that, I will vote for that, even though it's my birthday, I'm gonna have to give up my birthday to come to a meeting, but I'll do that, because that's what we're elected to do.
At least it wasn't a month later, sir.
We could change it to the 8th.
No,
Move it to the
7th is fine,
7th.
one day, move it one day, that's, I got elected, it's supposed to come, I got elected to come here, whatever works, and that's, past practice works fine for me.
Well,
Whatever.
come on your birthday, I'll miss my bowling date, and won't be even.
Mr. Mancini,
if I can, being a devil's advocate on that, and
right here he goes.
is, we'll still, I mean, even if we just move that, because you are right, we do have caucus and council, but if we even go to the 13th, we could move that council, and you got caucus and council, and then on the 20th, you got a caucus and a council too, so you're looking at 2 council and 2 caucus meetings if you just go what we have here. But again, team player I'm being, I'm good to the senior man go on that. I'm fine with that.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. Mr. Bergio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, as Mr. Councilman Salvador said, past practice, we've always had it the day after general election, which is usually on that Wednesday, so I'd be good with that also.
All right, so I would suggest putting it into a form of a motion to move the 6th to the 7th.
A motion so made to move November 6th caucus and council meeting to the 7th of November.
And putting that on the June 5th for verbal approval.
Putting on June 5th for approval.
All right. So the motion is to move the November 6th meeting date to November 7th, putting it on the June 5th council meeting under verbal approval, properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Mancini?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Orcutt?
Yes.
Stem?
Yes.
Poindexter?
Yes.
Salvatore?
Yes.
That motion is approved. Next one is to remove the December 26th caucus meeting due to the Christmas holiday.
I'll make that motion to remove the December 26th caucus meeting, or put that on to the June 5th council meeting under verbal approval.
Support.
All right, so the motion to remove the December 26th caucus meeting, putting it on the June 5th council meeting under verbal approval, properly supported. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we should just leave that alone, even though it is a day after Christmas, just in case there's something that's important that needs to be addressed. And we can always cancel a few days prior to if there's nothing important. And after tonight's action, I think we've canceled enough meetings.
Or we could always call a special meeting if it's needed. So either way, I mean, you've got, if you're going to call a meeting, you're either going to have a meeting and end it, or you're going to call a meeting. But the motion is on the floor. Michelle, please call the roll.
Poindexter?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Orcutt?
Yes.
Stem?
Yes.
Mancini?
Yes.
Salvatore?
No.
Motion is approved 6-1. It will show on the June 5th council meeting. Last item is proposed addition, discussion of the July 17th caucus prior and council meetings, which we already discussed, so we can eliminate that portion.
Motion was discussed.
Support.
Motion was discussed, properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Mancini?
Yes.
Poindexter?
Yes.
Salvatore?
Yes.
Stem?
Yes.
Orcutt?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Motion is approved. All right, we'll move to item number 3, replacement of desktop computer for council clerk. Connection sales quote of $909.74 per Council President Vecchio. What's taking place is Michelle's computer's constantly crashing. She can't even run the programs that's necessary, so it's an older system. It needs to be upgraded. Mr. Mancini?
There would be no upgrade over at the new,
It's going to go there with her. It's going to have to go to her office.
okay?
Mr. Orcutt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I looked at the quote, the sales quote that we have here, and it looks like I see the computer there, and there's 4 monitors. What are the 4 monitors?
It's given different sizes, so a 21.5 inch, two 22 inches, and a 23.8 inch. So one is a matching Dell, which would be the top 2, matches the actual computer, so the hardware would all be the same. The other one's below. One is a V7, one is a Samsung, and one is a ViewSonic.
Right, and is she gonna have 4 monitors in front of her?
No, it's only one monitor. It's only
Okay.
one monitor. It's coming as a package.
So, the different sizes, what's the size? It looks like it's, just to me, the reason why I'm asking, it looks like you're getting couple monitors here.
Yeah, no, this one comes up as if you look to the extended price, that's where the cost is. So you have a price for each monitor under price.
Right.
The extended price is for this package. So in looking at the extended package, it's the 23.8 inch full high-def LED LCD monitor from Dell for $273.05. The Optiplex 8 gig, 256 gigabyte with a 630 HD drive Dell is $613. And then there's a display port adapter that needs to come with it for $23.30. So the total comes out to $909.74.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Bergio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have we done any other comparables to any other computers? Similar computers, have we compared cost? Or is this a unique item that we need to have?
Well, there's a multitude out there. We went with the city's IT guy and what his suggestion is. So I would entrust this to what he had stated would be what's going to last for.
What kind of computer system we have now? Is it a Dell that we have now?
Yeah,
It
it's
is
a
a
Dell.
Dell.
Now.
Oh, this, okay.
Yeah, most of your commercial use or business use computers historically are Dells. They're a little bit better. Some are HPs, but most of them are Dells.
Okay. So this is something that was suggested that was good for our purposes
Yes.
by the computer guy. Okay, good. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a brief discussion with Michelle, and we've had some good luck with this company in the past, and it's being recommended by our IT unit, or our IT guy, I should say. So I mean, I don't see any problem with it. I think I'd like to make a motion to put on the next council agenda under verbal approval.
Support.
Motion put on the next council agenda under verbal approval, properly supported. Discussion. Mr. Mancini, your finger was up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. I will concur with my colleague, Mr. Salvatore. Zach Ellis, although I've only known him a short time, through all my dealings and everything I've dealt with, when you talk about technology and what's going on in this world and phones and computers, Zach is tremendous. And if Zach brings this, he's probably one of the persons that, as savvy as a lot of people are with this stuff, he's the best that I've seen. So I will concur with that. So
Thank you.
time to move ahead on this one.
I would say he's pretty good. He keeps your flip phone running.
I'll leave that go. He caught me earlier. I'll admit it.
So, motion on the floor properly supported to put on the June 5th council agenda under verbal approval. Michelle, please call the roll.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Motion is approved. It will be on the June 5th council meeting. Number 4, 6-minute audience participation during council meetings. Councilman Mancini per Council President Vecchio. Mr. Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. If I could have a minute on this. I've watched since I've been sitting where Councilman Stem is and where I've been where Councilman Salvatore is. And early on, one of the things that I really enjoyed was audience participation, and I still do. It's people's right to come to that microphone and speak how they feel, the needs that they have within their home, the needs that they feel that we should know. And I think a lot of them have done a very good job. In the beginning, we weren't able so much to relate back. The past council, a little bit we were. And we had some issues, and I seen a lot of great things at that microphone. But as I watch other communities, and sometimes as I watch what comes up there, I want to stay as professional as we can. And this is a council meeting, okay? It's not just a committee meeting. It's just not, a meeting of a card game. Or that this is important stuff. And when people come up there, when you watch other communities or you watch the school board, when I was going to them, I think they only give 5 minutes, and I think it's 15 minutes on any subject and a half hour on his audience participation as a whole. And a lot of times it don't even get nowhere near that far. So again, I believe I've seen a lot of good things with a lot of good suggestions, and a lot of good ideas have come forward to us. I don't think it's a karaoke night where people could go up and give personal feelings and, political agendas. That's not the place for it. At times I understand when there's things going on, I get it. But that's an area where it should be professional, and I think that any time when you're going to give a professional opinion or you're going to give a civic opinion, I don't think you need a half hour. If you do, we could vote on another 5 minutes, something of that sort. We could vote on another 10 minutes. That's the power of council or the council president. It's a power we have. I know not everybody's going to be overly happy with this, but I've been bringing a lot of things as of late, and I'm fine with that. I'll take that. Okay, I won't take the shots, but I'll take my decisions, negative, positive. So, but I would definitely like to hear what council has to say on this. Council president, administration, because we're the ones that are here on Tuesday nights. So I believe it is their right to come up there. I will state that. Every resident, every person that has feelings that they want to get to the administration, the council, they have that right to go up there. And you hope that they would be prepared and they'd have everything in order. And sometimes they don't. There's a lot of emotion there too, and we get it. But I mean, sometimes I think some people just come up there for the point of, maybe just the point of coming up there. And just so everybody knows, and out there in TV land, I've heard a lot of people discuss this, and I've watched school board, and I've watched other communities on my little iPad, how they do it. And I was really impressed with Cleveland Heights and Middleburg, and a little bit of Lakewood at that microphone. So that's kind of my feelings on that. So again, we want people to come up there. We don't want them not to come up there. So it's a tough one, but that's where I'm at with it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I can say this, I'll weigh in on this. So there are 14 cities and 2 counties in our general vicinity that have set time limits for audience participation. They range from 3 to 5 minutes. Some of these have gone as far as to eliminate speaking on any subject matter and only containing that portion to that participation portion to items on their agenda. You know, the average person speaks between 110 and 150 words per minute. So if you take a 5-minute span, that's 750 words. 750 words in a page, a piece of paper, is single-spaced printed words. So it's a page and a half, 750 words. Page and a half going through. I mean, right here, right around us, we have Brunswick, Independence, North Olmsted, Parma Heights, Strongsville, Westlake, Cuyahoga County Council, and City of Barberton, Council down to they all have instituted 3 and 5 minutes. So it's not something that's new. It's not something that is discounting the thoughts of our residents or anything else. I mean, some of these even have time limits on their members of council on what they speak on and how many times they can go through their rules. You know, I am in support of it, of reducing the time and cutting that time and just keeping things on point for that very reason. I mean, you know, as we do know, there's business is going on in our meetings, and yes, we do want to hear from the residents, but as Councilman Mancini said, you know, there's some of the personal stuff that needs to be negated. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, thank you. Jimmy and I talked about this earlier. My personal opinion is something that we should look at. Like I expressed to him, I would really take a serious look at this once we get into the other, our other decor over there. Hopefully, being moved into a new establishment, that the mindset of the audience can possibly change. I really would like to take a look at, see how things process over there once we get in there. Am I against this? No. Am I for it? As of right now, no. I think we should really take a look at once we get into the new digs over there, see how the people are reacting, if it's the same scenarios of what's going on, and I think we should take a look at it. That's it.
Do you think the council meetings are going to change because we go to a new chamber?
Hope so. I honestly hope so.
Are you thinking about we're going to a new city? I think you might be confused, sir.
No, I really think, I think once people see that we're, you know, it's a new atmosphere over there, you know, a new modern facility and I really think that maybe the people be more business-like over there. And
So with that being said, would you feel better if we went into that with a new structure? Would it be easier going in with a new structure instead of trying to implement a structure,
No.
a different structure in a new facility?
No. I think we should take a look at it first before we make a move. That's it.
Mr. Stem?
Thank you, Council President. Kind of an arbitrary question, but do we know what the average speaker currently does now?
What do you mean?
The time spent at the podium now for the residents when they're speaking. I mean, I understand it. Some are under 6 minutes, some are over, but does anybody have any idea what we think the average is?
With the exceptions that we've had, Michelle and I have been sitting with, I myself write down times that people are starting and times that they're stopping. And I would say that the average non-habitual, for a lack of a better term, are right around 3-4 minutes would be the average person. Then obviously you have the exceptions where we've had some that are 40 plus minutes already this year. I mean, we've got some that are averaging 15 plus. So that's where our issues are. So that's taking our audience participation time to anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half.
Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to figure out a good number where it's still fair for the resident and fair for us to continue to execute business up here.
Well, the other suggestion that I would have is if you put a 5, 6, 10, whatever your time limit you put on it, anybody that feels the need and it's at discretion. If they need a couple more minutes, it's not an iron fist, for one. But two, if a person knows that they're going to need more time, they can schedule with the council office to get on the agenda, to be put on the agenda, and do it as a caucus, come to a caucus meeting, whatever it may be, or in the case of if they're coming up with something of the personal nature, which we're trying to eliminate, then it can be they're coming up with whatever it may be that's on the agenda, given their allotted time. You have to look at the other people that are here that may want to speak. Mr. Orcutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that when people do come up to the microphone, I don't know who it was, said that they are expressing their true emotions. And we all know sometimes that's not easy to get up there and speak publicly. It's pretty tough for some of them. And at times, sometimes people can go on a little bit in expressing what their issue is or they may have a tree that needs to come down or what have you. And in the past, I've watched these meetings when they're on cable or attended meetings, and I've seen where you can find out what they're here for and maybe assist them by giving them, the service director's number. And the service director would get up and meet with them after they would speak. So I do understand where you guys are trying to go with this, but as a veteran and a person that wore a uniform, I understand that that's their microphone, and I will not be supporting this.
Thank you, Mr. Orcutt. Mr. Mancini.
Again, I put this out for us, and I'm, I could live with either way. And when I sat my first 2 years where Mr. Stem sat, I never ever thought that I would probably bring this forward. And, one of the things is, Councilman Orcutt, you're absolutely right. I've seen some people come in tough. I remember a specific woman coming up there, and people were before her for a long time, but she still sat over right before where that camera is, right out in the center out there, and waited patiently and spoke. And it was an urgent one. It wasn't a tree or something. I think there's some things that I think that probably could be handled easier, just calling City Hall, things of that sort, but she waited patiently. You're right, and I would never, ever, that wasn't ever the intention of this, and I know you didn't mean that, but to take that away. But as I talk with so many people, as you guys do, you hear people say, Jim, that audience participation just got maybe a little bit away. Maybe we should up here say, okay, we understand, things of that sort. And I'm not totally putting that on you, Council President, but maybe that's where, as we go to the new building, as Councilman Scott said, that we discuss this and say, okay, where are we drawing the battle lines here? I don't want to draw any lines. I don't. I've talked with others on this. I thought Councilman Salvatore said it best. That's their right to come up there, and we do want to hear them, and we do like to respond too, because sometimes I think that's I like that. Some residents, that's the only way they see me. But I don't think it's happens too often where a council president, Council President Vecchio do it, okay? And people didn't like it, but he did it. I've seen Council President Estorino do it. I've seen Council President Patton do it too. Right? And it's not easy for them in that chair to do that. You don't want to take somebody's rights. And again, that isn't that. So I thought I'd put this out here. It probably won't come back up for another long time, but I just thought it was something we'd put here, and it isn't a shot at any one particular person or anything like that, but, so I thought I'd bring it up for discussion and see where it went, so, thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Jim. Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. I'm kind of on the fence on this one. I certainly wouldn't want to hinder anyone's right or desire to speak at the microphone on any subject pertaining to city business. But on the other hand, I don't want that same podium to be used as a soapbox, getting airing out dirty laundry, on a street corner. I don't want to hear people preaching about this group, that group, whatever, it should pertain to city business. And, in 6 minutes, you can get a lot of information out in 6 minutes. I mean, and if you need more time, you could always ask for more time. So I don't know. I see both sides of the coin, and I don't know. I don't know where I stand at this point. So I had to think about it a little further.
Right back on the fence. Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand why certain members of council would like to have this discussed, and I don't see it here tonight as a proposed rule change. I see it under discussion. But as one councilman, I really wouldn't want to put a time limit on anybody coming before council. I worked hard on trying to get the consolidation of the audience participation under one section of our council agenda rather than two. It used to be separated out. A few years back, there were set up where you could talk about the agenda only, and then at the end of the meeting, you could talk about any subject. That was probably, double the amount of time that you could talk. But when people come to the microphone, 99% of the time they're coming here to vent something that bothers them, something in their neighborhood, something that happened to them personally, and this is their only place to do it. And to put a time limit on it, I mean, the power of the chair, it can stop any unnecessary dialogue that's coming from that microphone, especially if it's repetitious. And Mayor Gamella could remember the times when we had the airport issue, and there would be a packed audience, and it'd be standing room only, and people would be lined up, and they'd want to talk for 10, 15 minutes apiece, and the chair would say, okay, let's just take a little break here, let's figure this out. If you're all going to say the same thing, and you're going to say the same thing that the guy ahead of you just said, maybe step aside and let somebody else talk, especially if you're going to talk about something different. And the chair could do that. If somebody gets up there and repeats the same thing 3 or 4 or 5 times, the chair could say, you have made your point, and thank you very much. Anybody else have anything to say? Next. Or in the case of the other day when the one gentleman, he gives us those outstanding written reports for us to take a look at, and then he comes up and talks about it. And he had two reports back-to-back weeks, but he didn't come to the microphone the first week. But we already had the written report. It would have been very simple just to say, thank you very much. Council had an opportunity to read that first report from last week. Any questions from anyone? If there isn't, then what do you have new this week? So the chair and the gavel can control those negative situations. I don't really think that, I personally have never witnessed anybody that's gotten so windy that I wish they weren't, I wish we had that rule. But that's what, this is something that's gonna be a rule. It's not something that we can say, okay, we're gonna make this rule, but if you don't wanna follow it, it's okay, because we'll give you an extra couple of minutes, or call me ahead of time and I'll put you on the agenda. That's not how it works. It's a rule, and we're gonna follow the rule. And if there's 4 votes to say we're gonna have it, then that's what we're gonna have. And the only way it could change is by a vote of council at that meeting to allow that person to continue. And that, to me, I think is just, is not necessary. And I'm glad that you're not proposing it as a rule change this evening, because I wouldn't be supporting it, but I definitely think you have a right to continue to dialogue on it. And Councilman Scott suggested, let's see what happens down the road. And if we want to bring it up again, maybe 6 minutes is too short, maybe it's too long, maybe we'll leave it alone. But I would go along with moving it for a further discussion, but I wouldn't want to move on it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. I did say, as I sat up here, I did see Council President Vecchio, Council President Astorino, Council President Patton do a pretty good job up there. Will have their own opinion on that, but I think they did. What I did miss on, and I apologize for, from what I've heard from a lot of people who've been up here, the mayor, when you were council president, and Councilman Salvatore, they did a pretty good job up there too. You know, hey, we understand, we're gonna have to talk to the safety director. Hey, we understand you've made your point. We thank you for coming in a professional way. Not, okay, so, you two, from what I heard from a lot of my colleagues, did a pretty good job too. So we could have this discussion. I appreciate that, Councilman Salvatore, to Councilman Scott and everybody's opinion on this, and maybe put it maybe back in committee, and if there's a time, or we could, you know, within that 90-day frame, or put it back in committee, whatever. I mean, I'm just glad we had this discussion, that's all.
It wasn't in committee.
That wasn't in committee anyhow in the first place. So. But there's one other caveat. You know, there are, unfortunately, some communities even have sign-in sheets for people, and I believe the school board does, that you sign in to speak from the podium. So I mean, you know, there's a whole multitude of things that are out there, you know. And again, the discussion on this is great because obviously we're not the only ones. If there's this many communities, including the Cuyahoga County Council, that has done it, and I think part of it is to be able to control the pace, the cadence of the meeting, and what is taking place. And I think, I think the discussion on it is great. I think that everybody's brought some good stuff to the table.
Well, I made a mistake when I said put it in committee, but I'll just keep it out there. Maybe we have to move it to 2 minutes, maybe 20, I don't know.
You can make a
but
motion to put it on a caucus agenda if you wanted, Mr. Mancini. That's your option.
I kind of see where it's going here a little bit, but you know, I'm a realist. But I will make that motion, put on the next council agenda.
All right?
Council?
You want to put it on the next council agenda? That'd be the June 5th council agenda?
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Under what?
Well, that's what I'm trying to find out. Are you looking to put it under, are you looking to put it on the agenda in as verbal
Well,
approval
obviously you have to
of
go back to
something, or are you
caucus,
looking?
so yeah, I'm probably just gonna let it go.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it's out there, they know we're talking about it, maybe this is a good thing we're even talking about it, maybe they're hearing that, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Mr. Salvatore.
through the chair to Councilman Mancini, if you want to continue dialogue on it, then my recommendation to you would be to introduce it as a rule change at the next caucus meeting.
Caucus, yeah.
If you want further dialogue, and move it to a council meeting under verbal approval. I'm not suggesting that you do that, but I'm suggesting that is the proper way to do it. Thank you.
So your next caucus, you could do the caucus prior to, or the regular caucus on the 12th, if that's what your intent is.
When I brought it up, I didn't hear anybody, so, just it was discussed.
Motion was discussed.
Support.
Motion was discussed, properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
I know, it's me. Mancini,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Motion this was discussed has been approved. Moving on to item number 5, resolution number 27-2017, to extend the building permits or certificates of occupancy for any building, structure, use, or change of use that would enable the cultivation, processing, or retail sale of medical marijuana for a period not to exceed 6 months from the effective date of this resolution in order to allow the city administration, council, and the Brook Park Planning Commission to review applicable Ohio statutes, criminal codes, and the Brook Park zoning code relative to such use and declare an emergency, introduced by Councilman Scott. Note, this resolution was adopted on December 5th, 2017, per the override of mayor's veto with a vote of 6-0 for a 6-month moratorium that will expire on June 5th, 2018.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you. But I'd recommend that we do, as one councilman, I think that we should instruct the law director to prepare legislation for the next caucus meeting prior to the council meeting to extend this moratorium for at least another 6 months.
I support that.
Motion on the floor to have the law director prepare legislation for the next caucus prior to council meeting to extend this moratorium for an additional 6 months, properly supported. Discussion. Mr. Poindexter.
I just have a question. It says, place a moratorium for 6 months in order to allow the administration, council, and the Brook Park Planning Commission to review applicable Ohio statutes, criminal codes, and the Brook Park zoning code relative to such use. I'm wondering if in this past 6 months, have we learned anything on those points? Through the chair to the law director, I guess, would be appropriate.
Through the chair to Councilman Poindexter, I think it's safe to say that some of these rules and so forth are sort of moving targets that are evolving. Your point is well taken that we as a city haven't really fully discussed any of the different parameters that we have here, and we certainly should do so. I'm not sure that everything is completely coalesced, and so it may be that Councilman Salvatore's suggestion that once again we do a 6-month moratorium certainly is a good one. And maybe now it's time to look at getting council some information about what's going on now, what other cities are doing, what the rules are now, so that at the end of the 6 months or sometime between now and the 6 months, we have some idea as to the direction that the city might want to go.
Thank you. I support the law director's recommendations, and I'll support the motion.
Discussion on the motion.
Well, I just want, just for a point of clarification, I just want to, especially for the new members, there's a time limit on this. It has to be passed prior to June 5th. And the last time we extended it, we missed it by a couple of days, and we left the city vulnerable for if somebody would have came in and put in an application, we wouldn't have had this in place, and we'd have been having to deal with something that we're not ready for. So I think it's very important that we move forward on this and have it on the caucus prior to, with the understanding, I'm hoping that we could then move it to the council meeting for passage under suspension of the rules. But that was my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. So the motion on the floor is to have the law director draw up the new legislation to extend this moratorium, and it's properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Motion is approved. This will be on the June 5th caucus prior to. Mr. Salvatore?
I would just like to publicly thank Councilman Scott for staying on top of this and bringing this forward tonight, and it was a good call, Councilman.
I approached Michelle about this in March or April, because I was worried about when it expired, so she's been setting it back and setting it back and setting it back.
Michelle,
be?
thanks goes to you also.
Way to be there, lady.
All right, moving on. Item 5, Service Committee. Chairman Orcutt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We have 2 items to discuss today. Our first line item is, this is an ordinance authorizing the consulting engineer to prepare plans and specifications and the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into contracts for the city of Brook Park. Contracts 1802, 1803, and 1804, and declaring an emergency, introduced by Mayor Gamella. Last week when we discussed this, I believe we all had the general consensus that we were going to have the ward councilmen meet up and discuss and decide some of our worst areas, and then we were going to bring that forward to the mayor. We did that, and we also discussed possibly having a special caucus and council meeting, which was scheduled and then canceled due to scheduling. But all those things did happen. We all were able to meet up, all the ward councilmen, by Thursday. We had hashed out what our worst areas were, and I had the opportunity to sit down with the mayor and bring that forward to him. And we had some great discussion on the roads program. So with that said, I'd like to open this up for discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I'm
yes,
sorry.
Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Ed, you're the chairman at this point.
Just so I know, and for clarification, council, you can follow along here, I'm going to read the request as I received it in Ward 1, Independence Court, in Ohio. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In Ward 2, Dolores from Holland to Sylvia. Also Sylvia Court.
Yes, sir.
In Ward 3, Hummel Road from the railroad tracks to Fry, and Wangler Road. And in Ward 4, Brookhaven, Sailor, and Carroll. And I believe Carroll was, I was told, was going to be a crack seal.
Correct.
I guess my question is, when I discussed this with the engineer today, is he needs time to look at each one of these streets, figure out what's needed, or you could tell him what you would think is needed, and so he can get us a price so we can move forward on this.
Mr. Mancini?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, we appreciate that. And just so everybody knows, the four of us didn't meet together, so I
No,
wanted to
yeah.
clarify.
Jim,
that.
closer to the microphone. please.
Okay, Mayor, we appreciate you, working with us. Maybe we should have did this a little sooner, live and learn. I think this process here was a good little example of, I hope, what I start seeing in the future for this council, for this administration. Not that we weren't, but this was a tough one because we are out there, and I know you guys have heard me here, roads. Now it's grass, but it's roads. And it's very important to us. And I thank the mayor for, working, because maybe, I'm sure it's tough, and I'm sure our engineer is going to tell us how tough it might be here soon enough, so, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Stem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to the mayor. So the question you asked about what was entailed, for Ward 1 with Independent Court in Ohio, it was the resurfacing charge for both projects. So that's where Ward 1's at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ed, did you get that? Okay, thank you, Councilman.
Councilman Salvatore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to applaud the ward councilman for getting together, and I recommended it a couple meetings ago that's how we did it in the past, and it was very successful. And I could see that this was no different. This seems to be a very successful approach to getting things done. I guess my question through the chair to the engineer, how long do you think it'll take for us to have something where we can get the legislation drafted and get this over with? Because I really would like to move
3 or 4 days.
as quickly as possible on this.
Per ward.
It'll take a few days for me to get my numbers together on this. Excuse
Sorry, I
me.
couldn't hear you.
It'll take a few days. I would be surprised if I had it before the end of the week. So sometime next week, I would think I could have some information over.
Sometime next week, okay. So it would be safe to assume that we might be able to have this for the caucus prior to the next council meeting? Or would
June 5th?
That would be June 5th.
advisable for us to call a special meeting for Friday if we could move that quickly?
The next meeting's
2 weeks.
Is it June 5th?
June 5th would be the next caucus prior to.
That's 2 weeks. We don't have a meeting on that 29th?
Yeah. Yes, June 5th should work.
He's good with that.
For next Tuesday?
No, June 5th.
That's 2 weeks.
Yeah, so it's ready for the June 5th caucus prior to. Right.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mayor.
it's extremely important that the ward councilmen speak up at this time to let them know exactly what they want entailed in these projects. We've heard from Ward 1. If we could hear from 2, 3, and 4, that would help out greatly so we know exactly what needs to be done.
I've got it all right here.
I'll let you do.
Yep, I do. Councilman Bergio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also was glad to see that the ward councilmen got together during the week at various times and going to get what they need in their wards and to assess it. And I applaud the mayor also for being in a tough place because you don't have a whole lot of money to work with, but I think this is a good example of council and the mayor working together to try to give more back to the residents, because we've all known that the residents are asking for more streets to be done if possible. Excuse me. And I think that's going to be a reality. So I just applaud council and the mayor working together on this. And I think it's a good thing for our community. I'm looking forward to this being done. We've walked the streets, all of us have, and we've known how bad some of the streets are. So I think the list will show that these are the streets that really need it the most. So I think we're putting our money into areas that really will benefit the most from it too. So I applaud everybody's efforts on this. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Poindexter.
Thank you, Chairman. I just like to say that I don't have an opinion on this yet because I don't have a list in front of me. I haven't been provided a list. I would like to have that as soon as possible so I can go over them and especially go over the numbers when they come back from the engineer. So I'm neutral at this point on this. I know coming to this point, I want to carry as much money forward to next year as possible with the large roads program that we have for 2019. But I'm open-minded, so we'll see how the list looks, and we'll go from there.
Councilman Scott.
Yes, Eddie, you ready?
Fire away.
Contract 1803 will not change, that's Brookhaven. That's the concrete joint repairs, that's contract 1803, that's fine. Sailor, resurface, and Carroll is crack fill, crack sealing.
Mr. Chairman, Councilman, could you repeat Brookhaven again, please? Concrete.
Concrete joint repairs,
Thank you.
it's as stated in contract
Thank you.
1803 already. Let me add on, could I add, if you may? I just want the residents to know that we had a small pot to work for, and we try to divvy it up equally as possible. So if you take, Councilman Orcutt's got the numbers. If he feels deem it necessary, he could put them out there, but we try to stay as fair in each ward as possible. So there isn't any one ward that's getting a significant more money directed their way than any other ward. So that's all. Thank you.
Councilman Mancini.
Thank you. And if I could, Sister, right on that, these weren't easy choices. You know, and I really want the residents to know this and the administration. And again, thank you so much working with us, because I'm sure everybody up here, but the ward guys, when they're out, when they see people, my street, that's what we hear. And I think our finance director has done a great job bringing it forward to us that, you know, money very tight from the beginning. In 2019, not much better. We have I believe three big projects kind of coming next year, which is kind of nice, but they're really not directly right into the ward, to the home area. So this was not easy. This wasn't easy for us. And I know there's going to put, why didn't you do my street? Tough decisions up here. And I look at the assessment, and my two are pretty high up there. And I see them, and I hear a lot about it. Boy, them areas are bad. I know the other ward leaders, you know, the same way. Not easy choices, but I believe we made the right ones. And again, I'm hoping this all works, and I think it's just the start of us starting to really move ahead. The engine's getting going. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mancini, I think on top of that, what, as you were there, are you having done to Dolores and Sylvia Court?
Well, I can make one mass.
Go ahead.
Yeah, motion. Without any other discussion, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone involved, all the ward councilmen, Mayor, thank you very much for meeting with all of us too as well, and the council at large. Appreciate your patience on all this. It's been a lot of work for us, but I think we did good. And just to kind of give a synopsis to everybody, we started off with 1.211,500, and we made some amendments to that budget and reappropriated 295,000, which, as the finance director had told us, it's 1,506,500. After we worked on all the streets that we did, we went ahead and we're going to be doing, I believe, 9 streets total here. 9 streets. And with that, with leftover, we originally were going to put 265,200 to the 2019 road program. And right now we have, with all these streets and the numbers that we're over 500,000, and that doesn't include engineering for 2018. But the remaining will go towards 2019 roads. And with that said, if there is no more discussion, I'd like to make one large motion and add all these roads. Ohio Drive, Independence Court, Dolores Boulevard, from Holland Road to Sylvia Drive, Sylvia Court, and these are all resurfaces. Hummel Road, the West End Railroad tracks to Fry Road, Wangler Drive, Sailor Drive, Brookhaven, just the concrete joint repairs, and Carroll Drive from the end to Park Drive, crack filling. So I'd like to make a motion for all those changes.
Motion so made.
Support.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
under discussion, I'd still like to hear from the Ward 2 and 3 councilmen, including yourself, to see exactly what you want done on these streets so the engineer can make a logical assessment.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead,
Ward 2.
Councilman Mazzini.
Ward 2 would be Sylvia Court. Okay, resurfacing.
Okay.
In Dolores, from Southway all the way to Hummel. Holland to Sylvia. And I'd love to give you a lot more, but thank you.
From Dolores, Holland to
Holland,
Sylvia, what is it you're
Sylvia.
looking for, Jim?
Pardon me?
What is it you're looking for?
Resurfacing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I could hear from Ward 3?
Yes, Mayor. Hummel Road resurfacing the West End Railroad tracks to Fry Road, and Wangler Drive resurface.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I just
Councilman
have a
Pointer?
quick question for information, general information. The crack sealing through the chair to the engineer, is that done in-house or is that contracted out?
In the past, we've bid that project out.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none? Yes? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if this is the time for me to speak or not, but I'm just going to go on the record that, some of these streets, I don't know that we want to resurface. So they may require more concrete repairs to get the asphalt on top to stay in a condition that would warrant, resurfacing. So I just want to throw that out there that, Sylvia Court, I don't know that you can resurface Sylvia Court. Dolores, I don't know that you can resurface Dolores. We can, but I don't know that you're going to get the product and the longevity out of it that you're going to expect. So I just want everybody to be aware.
Okay, now I know we did use the stats report that was provided by us. That's the one that we use for our numbers.
Correct. Now, but not all of the streets on there, know that database is a guide, okay? It's not an end-all, be-all. I need to go through all these streets and reevaluate where they're at, and I can tell you that I'm probably not gonna recommend to the city to resurface Sylvia Court, because I don't know that you can do it, okay? I think the equipment's gonna tear it up, and you're gonna end up with rubble.
So when they tear off that asphalt and you find an open spot that's been damaged from salt or what have you, you're talking about concrete where they've got to actually cut that out, re-pour. Those numbers will all be changed then because of that.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. Like I say, the database is a guide. It's a guide, it's not the Bible. Anytime I've done, an evaluation of the street, I'll visit the street, I'll do a little more detailed investigation, try to come up with logical termini of a project so that it makes sense. Yeah, we're stopping here, we're starting there. I just want to be out there that, some of these, I don't know that we can resurface some of these streets.
Perfect. Councilman Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to the engineer. Ed, it sounds like you're pretty confident that Sylvia Court probably should be reconsidered. Having heard what you said, I think we should have a backup plan in place tonight so that it's about 55,900 based on what I'm looking at here for Sylvia Court. Would you agree or disagree with that?
The numbers?
Yeah.
I don't have those in front of me, so I really don't want to speak. I know I did do, earlier I did an evaluation on Sylvia Court and provided a budget number for a reconstruct on that one. I don't have that with me at this point.
Assuming that the numbers that we have tonight are accurate, 55,900, and assuming again that your assessment of that particular street it would be advisable not to do that at this time, then we could have the backup plan could be either that 55,000 moves into the 2019 program, or we pick up another street in Ward 2 for around $50,000 and be prepared to have that in place for discussion so that we can move forward, because I would hate to see this delayed any longer. So if there's an option available to us that you could suggest for that 55,000 or for approximately 50,000, whatever it comes out to be, that we have a place for that, to put that 50,000, if your recommendation is that Sylvia Court not be considered at this time.
If I may, my recommendation, just off the top of my head, would be to throw that money at a crack fill program, because doing a crack fill on one street is not much of a program. I mean, last year, I think we did about $100,000 in crack fill. Year before, somewhere around that same. We've been around $100,000, $75,000 a year in crack fill, alone. So one street to crack fill is not, I think that would be a great place to put that money.
Okay, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I would agree with you on that. I mean, if your recommendation as the city engineer would be to place that in the crack filling, I would say that would be a good backup plan, Plan B for this proposal that we're discussing tonight. And the Ward 2 councilman, if he has no objection to that, then we, based on the fact that you guys all sat down and agreed on something that makes sense, I would also think that having a backup plan based on the engineer's recommendation this evening would be prudent for us to be prepared to have that in place so that we can move forward.
Councilman Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ed, I appreciate your honesty, and probably in the bottom of my heart, I probably knew that might come, because I also got to realize on Dolores, Sylvia Court, you're talking curbs, aprons too. I mean, I have a bit of an issue there too. My next backup street's kind of a little bit pretty far down the list, as you would know, at least in Ward 2. Them areas that I brought up were my two real bad ones. And so, to sit here and say now, we'll go do this street, kind of tough, because I could probably think if you're going to start talking crack sealing, if I take that money, I could probably pick 3-4 streets, and I just don't really know right now if I could do that. I'd like to at least talk to our engineer about it, talk to the administration about it. I don't want to do that, but I think that's what, I'm on these streets a lot, but I don't want to just sit here and make that choice tonight at 9:35. That's why Ed's our engineer.
With that said, Councilman Mancini, at this point, I think we do have a motion and it's been properly supported. What we could do is, with that situation, we could probably just get on the horn with each other and find out what it is. We're gonna have to hash this out. We've got a little bit of time. If we could do it tomorrow, as early as tomorrow, talk about some of these numbers, and that way we can get this moving forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mayor.
I know I speak for council on this, Ed, and I know your professional integrity. We want it done right. Give us your best estimates. But again, we don't want to be going back here in a year. We want it done correctly, and I know you'll do that. And council will talk about it when he brings it forward, and we'll move from there. I agree with all Councilman Salvatore said as well. If there's some changes, we'll make the necessary changes.
Councilman Poindexter.
I just want to know what the exact motion is on the floor.
The motion was for the roads that we all talked about and proposed were for those 9 roads, to have those placed on the 2018 roads program. It was properly supported.
Who supported that, Ed? I didn't hear that.
I think Councilman Mancini did.
Okay, thank you.
Clerk, can you call the roll?
Orcutt?
Yes.
Mancini? Yes. Stem?
Yes.
Poindexter?
Yeah.
Salvatore?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Okay. Council, what's your pleasure? We just amended those and changed that.
Motion was,
This is going on the next caucus prior to, correct?
well, I think we're gonna need legislation prepared in order to discuss it, so I think what we did here this evening, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I think what we did is we asked the engineer to come back to us with his estimates on the proposed changes and his recommendation as to the Sylvia Court situation. And if everything, and as you suggested, we could discuss it tomorrow. Someone could meet with the mayor, talk to the engineer once he has it all finalized. And at that point, we can direct the law director to have the proper legislation prepared for passage once everything is in place. So I think what tonight, all we really did was give direction to get the information back to us so that we can finalize it and put it into legislative form.
You have done that, but you've taken no action on this ordinance. This ordinance needs an action. So the ordinance that's currently here, you're amending or changing completely, so.
That's what we did. We just amended. I was waiting for council's action after that.
So to clarify and reiterate, you have amended this, number one, this ordinance. So
We've
you've made a
amended
motion.
attachment A.
You've made a motion to amend it, am I correct? I had stepped away at that point.
Yes, it was, yes,
Okay.
to amend attachment A.
I think it's motion to place back in committee. Pending engineers.
Well,
Well, there's already a motion on the floor through the chairman. There's a motion to amend. There's an original motion to amend,
That just passed.
So we have to stay with that motion, so it's either gonna be,
Roll on that.
I'm sorry?
We took
And you took the roll on that, so it's already been amended.
That's,
Right.
so then,
Council, what's your,
motion to place back in committee pending engineers, numbers, his research.
Mr. Chairman?
Mayor,
Point of information, to the engineer, 1802, 1803, 1804, those are the major projects next year, Smith, Sheldon, and Howell, is that correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Certainly. On the ordinance, contracts 1802, 1803, 1804, that's Smith, Sheldon, and Howell next year?
No, 1802, what I did on that attachment A was try to group the projects together that I would sell
Okay.
together and would assign a contract number to, so there was no question as to what council was moving forward with, because I know there was some discussion of 2018, 2019 roads program, and I didn't want to muddy the waters in what I was trying to accomplish.
Council,
Okay, so excuse me, Mr. Chairman, it was 1802, 1803, 1804 was the 2018's road program, and the other 763,000 was the 2019.
In essence, but.
Yes.
I mean,
Thank you. Just wanted clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Council, so to clarify what,
Council President,
Yep.
I'm the chairman on this committee here, and I want to just make sure that we're running this smoothly here. I've got Councilman Stem waiting to speak. He's been waiting patiently.
but hold on, you're on first of all, your only discussion should be on your amendment, now I'm gonna straighten you out as to where you're at.
Okay?
You guys
We
are,
voted on that amendment.
correct. So
Okay.
now you guys are defeating this legislation, because you're not enacting anything on this piece of legislation. So your motion should be that this has been read in committee, and defeated this, you need new legislation. This legislation matters no more.
We're having discussion right now, I believe. This is a caucus meeting. We're just having our discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I believe I made a motion
Yes, what was your motion again?
to place back in committee pending the engineer's suggestions.
That motion dies for lack of second. Councilman Stem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through the chair to the engineer. Other than Sylvia Court, are you comfortable with all the other roadways that listed to go forward?
not at this point, no.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
A question again to the engineer. On the major projects next year, Sheldon Road, Holland Road, Smith Road, how soon do we need the legislation to get moving on that so we can start the engineering and things of that nature?
The legislation on Smith's been authorized under we have separate legislation on that. I have Holland Road prepared, so that can come forward,
Okay.
probably at the next meeting. And then, Sheldon Road I'm still working out some of the details with Middleburg and, the county.
Okay, my point is, I just want to make sure we're on line for those roads because those are major projects.
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
sir.
Councilman Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair to the engineer, on the first piece of legislation that's on for discussion, and it's also on the agenda for a special council meeting immediately following, that has the contracts 1802, 03, and 04, where it provides for a consulting engineer fee of a lump sum of $55,500. Now, the changes that are being made or suggested tonight, is that gonna change that figure at all?
Yes.
You have a ballpark figure what it might adjust to?
I do not.
Okay. So until we really know what that number is going to be, we really can't do anything with this under the special council meeting tonight. And quite frankly, there's the second part of it that outlines the streets and the repairs, and it actually has the numbers in it. That piece of legislation should probably be cast aside and have a whole new piece of legislation drafted with the recommendations that you brought forward in order to make this thing move smoothly. So I'd recommend that that's what we do. We're gonna probably have to have new legislation drafted upon receiving the information provided by the engineer, and hopefully within the next few days we'll have that. And the legislation can then be drafted rather quickly, I'm sure, by the law department, because we have a sketch here to follow, which makes it pretty easy. You just gotta change the amount on the first piece, and the second piece, some of these streets are already in there. Some of the work that's being done, like Carroll Drive and some crack sealing and some other, Taylor, some of that is already in here. So it's gonna be pretty simple to make the necessary changes. So that's what I'd recommend that we do in order to get this done properly.
All right, so point of order, gentlemen. What needs to happen now, because you've made the amendment to this, this piece of legislation, this ordinance, needs to, for lack of a better term, be killed. New legislation needs to be drawn up and brought forward.
You know, we have to
That's
do,
what
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Salvatore
is
said.
have a reading committee and have new legislation drafted.
Exactly, so that's what I'm stating, so,
He made the motion, didn't you already, did you make the
no,
motion?
nobody made
Sal?
that motion yet.
I don't have that.
Actually, Mr. Poindexter made a motion to move it to committee, which should be the proper portion of it, because it's not even it's in the committee at the moment, but it needs to go back to it because there was an amendment. So Mr. Poindexter made that motion that died for a lack of second. My suggestion is that motion be remade, you put it back into committee, then read it.
So remade.
Support.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Councilman Salvatore.
we're not gonna amend this. We're gonna create a new one.
They already made the amendment. They made the motion for the amendment.
It really wasn't, no, it wasn't, Mr. Chairman. It was a suggestive approach is what he made. They made a suggestion of how we should move forward and what streets should be done, but it really has nothing to do with this piece of legislation that's in front of us.
But a vote was taken, Mr. Salvatore, so yes, it would stand. That's why I'm saying, so let's,
It wasn't a motion to amend, because that was not made.
We made a motion to change all those streets on attachment A.
right, which was that motion? Michelle, what was the motion to go back to? Was that motion to amend?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, so on record, it's
I
a
even
motion to
asked.
amend. So there's a second motion, which I'm gonna overrule everybody. There's a second motion properly seconded. Michelle, please call the roll on the motion to put it back into committee.
What's the second motion and properly
To
second?
put this into committee, and at that point, you can make a motion, because it's right back in your committee, you can make a motion that it was read.
Okay, who made the second on that?
Mr. Mancini.
You did? Okay, all right, so there's a motion on the floor to put it back in the committee?
Yep.
All right, properly seconded.
Yep.
Okay.
Michelle, please call the roll.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Mancini.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Stem,
Yes.
Salvatore.
No.
Scott,
Yes.
Bergeron,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
6-1.
Motion approved to put back into committee. Now, gentlemen, you can make the motion, if you would like. Or you can just leave it sit there until at that point, which is fine also.
We'll leave it at,
I'm sorry?
that's fine.
Yeah, I'd rather not take an action
That's
that
fine.
is wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Wait.
That's fine. All right, so that ordinance right there is left back in committee, and now moving on to our second line item. It's an ordinance authorizing the mayor to hire an inspector for Brook Park contracts 1802, 1803, and 1804, and declaring an emergency. It's introduced by Mayor Gamella. Mayor, did you want to speak on this?
Well, the question's been rendered academic by council's action.
Council, what's your pleasure?
Motion was read.
Support.
Motion on the floor that it was read in committee, properly supported. Clerk, could you take the roll, please?
Mancini,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Salvatore. Stem,
Yes.
Orcutt,
No.
Bergeron,
No.
Scott,
No.
3-4. 3-4, Ed. Motion failed.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr.
Through the
Salvatore.
chair to the engineer. We're gonna need these inspectors once we agree on the finalization of this roads program, correct?
Correct.
So I see no reason to kill this legislation, or I would just put it back in committee and bring it back out next week when we're ready to move forward. Because we're gonna have to hire inspectors anyway, and it's already outlined for, the contract numbers are not gonna change, is that correct?
They might. Yes, the contract numbers, they might change.
I mean, we could even move forward on this on the first reading tonight if we wanted to, or just move it along that, with, as a companion piece with the actual legislation on the roads program, so.
With the changes, I know you would not be able to move forward, Mr. Salvatore.
The only change is gonna be is in the amount. That can be amended.
Right, so with that, along with the additions to it, so I mean, I would suggest following suit with the last one. Keep it on the same line and just follow suit. Draw up the new one so that everything is right there and in line.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I should say, because the chairman is Councilman Orcutt. The motion was to have this read in committee, and that failed.
Correct.
That would have killed this. We're not looking to kill it, we're looking to put it back in committee.
Committee, right.
Right, so then
that-
put the motion back to there.
So I would
That's
make a
what I'm
motion that we place it back in committee, Mr. Chairman.
There you go.
Real quick before that, Councilman Poindexter?
No, that, He had mentioned that he was wanting to move forward on first reading, and I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. However, I would feel comfortable seconding his motion to place it back in committee.
Okay. I think we already do have a motion by Councilman Salvatore to place it back in committee, properly seconded by Councilman Scott. Michelle, could you take the roll, please?
Salvatore,
Yes.
He didn't.
Scott?
No.
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Poindexter.
Yes.
Motion carried, Ed. I should say Councilman.
All right, so that motion is carried. We're on to item number 6. Take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Motion to adjourn properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Orcutt.
Yes.
All right, the caucus meeting is adjourned at 10 minutes to 10. All right, we are going to go right into our second notice. So, special meeting of council. Notice was sent to council members Stem, Mancini, Orcutt, Scott, Bergio, Poindexter, Salvatore, Council President Vecchio, Mayor Gamello, Law Director Horvath, Finance Director Single, for a special council meeting to be held on Tuesday, the 22nd day of May, immediately following the regular caucus meeting. Michelle, please call the roll, members.
Scott,
Here.
Bergio,
Here.
Orcutt,
Here.
Stem,
Here.
Mancini,
Here.
Poindexter,
Here.
Salvatore.
Here.
Everyone, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, there's one meeting, or one item on here under introduction of ordinances and resolutions for first reading. Actually, there's 2 items, but. Item number 1, ordinance authorizing the consulting engineer to prepare plans and specifications and the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into contracts for the city of Brook Park contracts 1802, 1803, and 1804 and declare an emergency.
Point of
Introduced
order.
by Mayor Gamello.
Point of order. I don't think we moved these to the agenda, did we? No. Oh,
No, but this is the meeting, sir. The meeting items are listed on it. We have to take an action because they are listed.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Salvatore.
the action was taken at the caucus meeting. These items have been put back in committee. Therefore, there's no items to discuss on this agenda. Therefore, I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. Motion to adjourn properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
he did it, I heard him. Orcutt,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Poindexter,
yes.
This meeting is adjourned.